3000.
What is doing? My name's Maloney. This is a 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by adult performer, content creator, Isabelle Deltore. Isabelle, thanks for coming.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming. You've been someone I've wanted to get on the show for a long time, and I think our friend Frank might have helped nudge you in the right direction.
Yes, Frank's a legend. He's like one of my favourite humans.
He's a great guy. And you've got an interesting story, so should we jump into it? I know you grew up around Melbourne. Whereabouts did you grow up?
I actually grew up in Frankston.
Don't say that like that.
But I'm talking Frankston in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. So that was like, it was a whole ecosystem, that place.
It is. Frankston has changed a bit, but it is still at its core Franger.
It is. I remember like at Frankston train station, like this is how far we're going back, where they first introduced like the speakers that would play classical music to keep all the junkies away. But I'm like, junkies need public transport too. And one guy had cracked it so badly, he actually like grabbed onto the speaker and like smashed his head on it and broke the speaker. And I'm like, that was it. They hadn't even been up for a week.
Jeez. Franger, man, it's still kind of, it's got its grimy parts. But what were you doing in Franger as a kid? Like, what did kids do?
Paint trains.
Paint trains, there you go.
That's what kids do in Frankston. They paint trains and bomb trains.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you were part of that sort of scene?
I had a lot of friends in that sort of scene, you know, may or may not have like been, you know, out creating art on a public transport system at some point. Some people might have some photos of artwork I may or may not have created in public spaces.
I'd like to see those photos.
They're pretty shit. Okay. They're really shit. Frank will tell you. I think he's got them.
Oh, really? I'm going to DM him after this. So you're growing up in Frankston, and what does a girl who's growing up in Frankston in the 80s, 90s, what do? You're going to school, you're hanging out, you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Riding in stolen cars with boys and...
Really?
House parties and all that kind of stuff that kids back then did. You know, we didn't have mobile phones; it didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So it was just jumping from party to party and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And so you've obviously later in life you've developed a love for horses, but there's not really any horses hanging around at Frankston Station.
No, there is no horses at Frankston Station. So yes, actually horses. I used to do like a equine riding school, like when I was, you know, early teens and stuff like that. And then I didn't have anything to do with horses for ages, and I actually bought my first horse like 7-8 years ago now. So it's a fairly newish development.
Newish hobby. I guess like a lot of these hobbies, you need to wait till you're financially stable before you can go out buying horses.
Oh my God, yes. I just got a massive vet bill for one of my young horses, and I'm just like, that's a month's worth of rent. Thank you very much. Because she decided to break dance or whatever she decided to do under the wire fencing and cut her leg open. So I'm like, thanks.
That's going to cost it's going to hurt the wallet as well as her leg.
It's detrimental to my wallet.
So you did eventually find yourself in the adult industry, but before that, you were in corrections, I believe.
I was in corrections. I wanted to save the world. I think it all came from, you know, hanging around with, I'm not going to say disadvantaged, but we were all on the back foot, like all of the people I grew up with, you know, in my teens and early 20s and stuff like that. And so I managed to come out of the industry, I managed to come out of that scene fairly unscathed. Like I didn't have a police record or anything like that. So by the time I'd sort of reached my mid-20s, I remember seeing a guy and he'd gone into Centrelink, and he'd done a long stint in jail, and they had changed the ticketing system or something like that on the public transport. He couldn't wrap his head around it. And he was like, I don't understand how the transport, like, why do I have to buy this ticket? You used to just buy a paper ticket. It was like...
It was the Met key.
It wasn't the Met key. It was like the little paper key that you put in there,
Met
whatever.
card, I think they were.
Something like that. And he just couldn't fathom it. And, you know, I know Centrelink staff always under the pump, but he just couldn't wrap his head around it, and he was losing his mind, and they didn't get it. I'm like, where was the integration from a long stint in jail to society? And shit's changed. What happens?
Yeah. So you thought, okay, I want to be.
I want to save souls.
Yeah.
So, I think that's why I chose, like, I started a double bachelor's in social work and human services. I volunteered at corrections up in Swan Hill, which was interesting.
Yep.
I did some work up there.
That's like a proper, like, sort of, not maximum, but it's a high security sort of.
So I first started in, like, youth justice, like a few different facilities. And then I went across to an all-male prison in the adult system. So it was after, I think it was like 4.5 years. By the end of it, I was so jaded by the system, and even like the crooks that would come in, that they were so institutionalized, and there was no getting out of it. Like this system, it was just
it's a cycle.
Yeah, catch-22. So I'm like, man, I want to get off this bus. I'm good.
Yeah. So you saw it from the inside, and you thought, there's no way anyone's saving this. I just need to get out of this system.
Yeah, exactly right. So, and it was really hard when I walked into the adult prison. I had to put in declarations of association with so many people in there, because I'm like, I knew that person, I knew that person. I actually had like a friend of mine that I'd been friends with since we were 16, and I didn't know he was in there, and he was in there. I'm like, oh, dude. And we're like, can't talk to each other. Yeah, cool, man, no worries.
So that's what happens if you know someone. You have to declare that you know them, and you have to stay away from them to stop any kind of...
I think it's just in your best interest as an officer to sort of stay out of it, and plus it doesn't look good for them either. They're like, why are you talking to a screw? It's like, dude, we grew up together. So it's a bit of a, I don't know you, you don't know me, but I had to still put it down. There was even a guy that I was seeing in high school, like, it was very brief, super nice guy, came from a very wealthy family in Hawthorne, and he just snapped one day and killed his sister's ex-boyfriend. I'm like, what are you doing here? Wow. It was wild. Yeah. It was the sweetest guy. Don't know what happened.
Yeah.
So
it's obviously you're going to meet a lot of people in there. You're going to see a lot of people in there that you probably knew, but also people you didn't. Did you, being a petite, attractive 20-something, did you feel threatened in there at all? Was it? It must be a confronting place for someone like yourself to be.
I felt more unsafe in the youth justice, because it was just like the Wild West, because it was done like those facilities were run by Department of Human Services, so it was a very left, very touchy-feely, let's talk about our feelings. But you had violent offenders in there that had undiagnosed mental illness, and they were freaking dangerous, man. Like, I almost had my throat cut open with a broken table tennis bat. Yeah. And that particular kid had like schizophrenia, but was too young to be diagnosed. He got an hour in the slot. Yeah. That was it. And I'm like, dude, like this much closer, like a couple of centimeters, he would have cut my throat open.
Yeah.
And there was and that was in remand.
Yeah.
Like, cool, thanks, man.
Yeah, well, it's hard. Those kids, and when you're talking about the cycle before, that's the start of the cycle.
Yeah,
they start in there, and then they usually get out for a bit, and then they're back in. Yeah,
yeah, that's it. And what happens when I don't know what happened with his sentencing or anything like that. But what happens when if and when they reoffend? Do you know what I mean? I'm like, how does that escalate? If he's willing to attack a worker, what happens then? Where is the intervention? And back then, we're talking like nearly 15 years ago. Yeah, almost 15 years ago, the world was very different. The society was different. The red tape and stuff was different. So yeah, I think we're a little bit more forward thinking now.
So it's interesting how you mentioned that there's a lot of talk about our feelings and stuff in the juvenile or youth.
I feel like that's correct.
Yeah, the juice. But there is none of that, from what I can gather, in the adult system. So, or there might be, but people just don't go down that route.
I feel like, from the point of view, when I was there again, we're talking, 14, 15 years ago, I think the kind of offenders that were in there at the time were, for whatever reason, they were in maximum security or supermax. So if you got someone in there, like one of the inmates who was responsible for the biggest schoolgirl murders, do you know what I mean? Like, they were horrific crimes. So how do you talk about feelings with someone of that caliber? The guy who was responsible for the murder of Jill Mayer, he was in there too. before he had actually killed your mayor. But how do you talk about feelings with someone like that?
Yep. But there is a flaw in the system there because he
Absolutely.
gets out and reoffends pretty much straight away, doesn't he?
He, from my limited interactions, he was a model citizen, like and he was compliant. Like he ticked all the boxes. He knew how the system worked, and there was no red flags. Obviously, I don't know, and that was from my very limited interaction. Like I don't know the story behind that. What outside of that snippet of the interaction I had. And I'm sure there's a whole other, chessboard to that. So, but yeah, you can't keep people locked up forever either, without just cause. So it's...
Yeah, but there needs to be rehabilitation. And I think from my, living a long time in St Kilda, you see a lot of these people get out of jail, they go to these halfway houses and they don't know what they're fucking doing. And I'm sure there is some services there, but I don't think it's enough.
The system is not correct. But I feel like, that we don't live in a perfect society, and what we've got isn't terrible. It's just not great.
Yeah.
So
it can always be improvement.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And people fall through the cracks and they just, it happens. The system's like we're trying to manage millions of people in the city and it's never going to work.
No. So you finished your degree, even though you sort of figured out, I'm guessing, that it wasn't for you, but you finished your double degree.
I actually didn't end up finishing it.
Okay.
Because I was just like, this is not for me. I had become so jaded by the end of it. I'm like, why bother? What am I going to do with this? At the end of the day, I'm never going back into this industry ever again. So there's no point. Right. So the other options were either child protection, which I couldn't think of anything worse. I'd rather eat a couple of wasps, or working, with women who, domestic violence and stuff like that. Again, a very difficult...
Hard to not take your work home with that sort of
exactly
stuff.
Exactly right, and you are constantly bound by red tape and policy and procedure and legislation. And
you just want to help people.
Yeah, exactly right. So I'm like, you know what, I'm cooked. I'm done. Someone else's problem. And I know that's probably a bit of a cop-out, but, it wasn't for me in the end. I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, fair enough. So where do you find yourself going, in which direction then?
So what had actually happened is I had just decided working in the prisons was just not for me. So I was like, what am I going to do with myself? Like I was actually booked in to have my nose done, like surgery, and my boobs done in Bangkok. And I'm just like, what happens? And it was in a month. And I'm like, what happens when I come back in, go back to work and they need to do facial recognition on me again? That's what I was terrified of. I don't know if it would have been a thing, but I'm like, how do I explain that, man? And I was already like a bit of a target anyway, being a young female. And they're like, oh, you must be having an affair with a prisoner. I'm like, what the fuck gives you that idea, man? I couldn't... Like, even how could I fucking do that? Like, it's not a thing. You got cameras everywhere. Even if not a thing, man. Not that the intention was ever there, but I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, you're an idiot. So I was already under that pressure anyway. So I'm like, oh, I couldn't bear the thought of it. But it takes 3 months, process to reapply for another government job and finding, a job that was open. And I'm like, mentally, I didn't have that time. So I'm like, oh, I'll just secretly strip at like kittens or spin at rhino or something. So I just started dancing. And the first night I stood there like an idiot. I didn't approach anyone. My first like lap dance.
You got to hustle though, don't you?
You got to hustle. And I just stood there like a potato. And the first lap dance I did, the guy goes, you dance like a snake. I'm like, what? He goes, you just keep wiggling. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not good at this. But I made in one night what I would make in a fortnight. And I'm talking doing night shifts as well. Yep. In the prisons, I'm like, sent them an email at like 4 a.m. when I got home, like, thank you very much, fuck off. Yeah. So, yeah, that was it.
And, you start seeing the dollar signs and then you can start to, like, work for yourself. Like, you can sort of pick and choose your own hours and that looks appealing.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it was a case of, it was meant to buy me time to find another job. And I kept looking and nothing was blowing my hair back. I'm like, this is horrible. And it's not like I was I worked at Men's Gallery behind the bar years and years and years, but like I think I was like 19, 20. So I wasn't a stranger to working nights. Yep. And I'm like, just never left.
Yeah.
Just never left.
No. I think from my dealings with the, strippers and stuff, the money is good, and then it's hard to sort of think about, all right, now a normal 9 to 5 is not that enticing.
Yeah, exactly right. And I felt like, and it was a super fun environment. I think that's for me, I worked with other girls, we partied, we had the best time ever. And I don't mean partied as in like getting lit. I mean, it was a fun environment. People are there to have a good time. And I found that, I ended up, a lot of my, not clients, but a lot of the guys that would come in, they had problems with their wives. And of course, coming from a social work background, I'm like, now, let me help you, buddy. So it was like the most expensive topless therapy session that they'd ever had in their life. But I played a bit of a different function in there. But we had some of the best nights and some of the worst nights. Like I've been to shifts where I paid my $80 house fee or $120 house fee and I made nothing. I paid to work, wasted hours of the night, and came home with nothing.
Yeah.
So
it's like a barbershop sort of scenario where you have to pay for your chair. You've got to pay for the privilege of working.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have to pay to be, you're renting a space, you have to pay to be there like any other contractor. Yeah. Not like any other contractor, but like tattooists and, barbers, hairdressers, whatever. So the same thing.
Yep. So you get a taste for this sort of adult industry and you think, okay, this is more where I'm heading, and you just go full time into stripping and the I'm thinking around then there was a bit of like sort of magazine stuff that was happening, like FHM and stuff. Was that sort of happening?
Yeah, so magazines in print media was still a thing. Oh my God. Holy, you could still buy Picture and People magazine at the servo. Damn. So I did my first photo shoot and I never meant to come out in the public, and I'm just like, oh, I'll just give it a go. The first thing I got was a cover, and I'm like, oh, okay, and then that was it. Like, I had a few other, Picture and Picture Premium covers, Penthouse cover. I was in Zoo a couple of times and, and other magazines and stuff like that. So there's I'm still thinking about print media. I'm like, damn, that's like a decade ago.
But that must be cool because you can go and do your shoots. I'm guessing you're making more money and you're not out there hustling every night though.
Yeah, I think it gave you, for us, like especially with Penthouse, it was very much part of not the cool gang, but it set you apart from the other girls, so you were elite.
Yeah, so when you turn up, they'd be like, oh, there's Isabelle, she's got a cover shoot for Penthouse. Like, she's on that next sort of level.
Yeah, that's it. And then, it was like all the showgirl stuff, and that was back when showgirls were actually considered to be also elite. Mm-hmm. And I competed in Miss Nude World over in, like, just out of Chicago. And I won that by pure accident. I don't know why.
I used to have to announce that for you.
Oh, yeah. Miss Nude World. And I felt I had the worst imposter syndrome. Like, I felt like I really didn't deserve that title at first. Like, the first Miss Nude World I won.
Yeah.
And then, like, I sort of tried it for Miss Nude Australia, like, a couple of years later, and I didn't even place. I'm like, oh, my God, I wasn't in good condition then. Like,
but what a subjective fucking thing to pick who's the best nude person.
It
you know what I mean?
It totally is. Look, there's a formula. There is a formula. And, when I competed for Miss Nude Australia afterwards, after I'd won Miss Nude World, I don't know why I did. I just liked competing. I knew for a while that I wasn't prepared. Like, I didn't walk into it prepared. It was really half-assed. And I accidentally got really lit before I got on stage. Like, I had, like, two fireball shots, and then as I went out I had a third one, and I shouldn't have had that third one, and I don't know how I didn't fall off my aerial hoop. I'm like, you're an idiot, why'd you do that? But I kind of knew I wasn't prepared, so I'm like, oh, whatever, I'll just check out. And then afterwards I'm like, I regret my decision, I should never have competed. So that's why I went back, and I'm like, all right, I got something to prove now for Miss Nude World, and I competed the second time.
But what a cool title to say. Once upon a time I was Miss Nude World.
Miss Nude World twice. So I think I'm the only Australian that had ever won it twice.
There you go.
So yeah, that's pretty cool bragging rights.
For sure. So with you touched on with the other performers and stuff at the strip clubs, like, is it generally a big family? Is there a bit of bitchiness going on? Is it competitive?
When I was there, it was definitely a family. Mm-hmm. And I never had any issues with girls, really. Like, of course, you'd have a few personality clashes, but, you all tend to work in harmony. Like there was all money on the table, and everyone. I never really saw any cattiness that stood out in my mind, so it was generally pretty good, you know. So
yeah, that's cool because I wonder, like, you know, it's a competitive game, and
Absolutely.
whether people get, you know, like I was talking to that dude, and then you came in and got 2 lap
yeah.
dances.
Oh, look, that absolutely does happen. Like
Yeah.
you try not to, you're not supposed to cut guys, you know,
Yeah.
girls' grass. It happens, you know, but for the most sake, like the management were pretty good, and I mean, I never worked in any venues that were a little bit Wild West. Like I worked at a few that were like pretty hectic, but not like that. Like if you cut grass, management were pretty quick to come down on you.
Yeah.
So yeah, otherwise you would have disharmony in the workplace, and you can't have that when you've got girls who are, you know, everyone's drinking, partying, have a good time. You can't have loose cannons, and they wouldn't last very long at venues. So
Yeah. So sometimes you'd just see like 18-year-old girls start out, like really young ones, and you're like, okay, you're not going to last in this sort of game.
Some of them were just not, like, they just were not any good. And I mean, like, not any good is that, like...
They couldn't work the room, or they couldn't...
No, like, some of them just couldn't hustle, but also, too, like, some of them couldn't handle their alcohol. And so they would have to be put on bar bans because they would just get so lit. And what happens if you're 19 and you've got free alcohol and you can just get absolutely trashed at work and then still earn money? Like, don't get me wrong, I've been on the other end of that where I've woken up with McDonald's chips in my hair and had to text the manager going, do I still have a job? They're like, you're fine. But I made bank in the VIP bookings, and when they're buying bottles of Moe after, like, bottle after bottle after bottle after bottle, you have to be a bit careful. But after, like, you know, a bottle of Moe, you're trashed.
Yeah.
So, and you've got a 4 or 5 hour VIP booking. It's really hard to sort of balance that.
Yeah.
You know, occupational hazard. I think that's what cooked me in the end. I'm like, I'm done.
So break down that. So some dudes will come in. They'll pay for the VIP thing for hours. So you just get to hang out with them for hours.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they're getting multiple girls.
Yeah,
So they can
sometimes.
feel like a big baller, and they just feed you booze, and you do dances, and you make...
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole entity. Like, I ended up playing... Like, we've had nights where we've played like charades and stuff like that, and it was just bizarre, like just bizarre, and the weirdest nights, the most weirdest nights, playing Jenga. Yeah. Like some of the clubs would have like Jenga or something like that, and you're in the middle of a dance. It's supposed to be like sexy and seductive, but you were literally just, you know, twister. Like, it's just wild.
Yeah. And a lot of these guys, I'm guessing, have got a lot of money, but there must be some dudes that don't have the money, but they just want this experience. That are fucking,
yeah. I would get a couple of, like, every now and then you get someone coming in, and, you know, they would only be able to get a $20 lap dance, and they would sit at the table and just drink water and that kind of thing. And, like, it's unfortunate, but it's not good business to sit and chat to that person for too long because time is money. And you know, that's where you have to leave your social worker hat at the door. And it's like, you're there to make money. It's a business. So
yeah, and I guess you have to take your social worker hat off with all the other girls who are working there that potentially have their own issues going on as well.
Yeah, look, I'm just going to say this, that I think most girls who are in the adult industry, for whatever reason, they didn't fit into societal norms as we know it. Because if you look at it, it's kind of an antisocial job. So, and I'm going to talk about like adult performing as well. Like we were chatting about this earlier, and about how like shooting video and stuff like that, there are ramifications for that, and whether you can handle those ramifications afterwards. But if I was to go and get a normal civilian job now, like what happens if they find me on Pornhub? What happens then? What's the fallout from that? So, and then at the time when you're having a good time and like you're stripping or whatever, what happens when, you know, your boss finds you on OnlyFans, on Pornhub, or in the strip club, or doing buck shows and stuff like that? What happens? Oh, you get fired. Yeah. You know, and they just go, oh, it's performance-based. Well, no, they just get fired. Yeah. So there's ramifications for it. And, you know, I didn't think of it. I didn't think of the ramifications. I'm like, I'm going to be doing adult work forever. I'm not doing adult work forever. Yeah. And it will bite me in the ass. Yeah,
and I think not just with porn and that sort of content. I think kids just being dickheads on social media, they're not thinking about it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And you get that especially with any kind of social media. I mean, how many times do you see that, you know, John and Scott were fighting in the playground, and someone's recorded it, and then all of a sudden, it's up on TikTok or Facebook or whatever, and then you got issues. So
yeah, you look at like all that Summer Nats footage going around now. Those security guards, like they're going to be, yeah.
I have a lifetime ban from Summer Nats.
Do you?
Yes.
Can you tell us why?
About 6 years ago, and we were up there working with one of the one of the strip clubs up there, and we were on this bus that they had converted, like they cut the top of the bus out, called the puppy wash, and we had like little puppy wash t-shirts, and they had like it was all water. You could have water in the back, and we all had all wet t-shirts. And then anyway, we were standing on Tough Street, and that's like the main, for those of you who don't know, that's the main drag of Summer Nats. And you could just walk across Tough Street. There was like a little section in the barricades where people could walk across as people were doing laps around Summer Nats. And guys were like, white top, white top. So we got our titties out, as you do at Summer Nats, that's what you're there for. And anyway, that year, someone had fallen off the back of a ute and they had died. So that was so bad. And it was, just silly decision. Like he was on a flatbed and it was great. It was just a whole shit situation. So I suspect, I'm going into conspiracy theories, that to divert, attention to that, we had made a news article that, girls are getting their boobs out of Tough Street. And I'm like, it's not the first time it's ever happened. Like, it's happened since the conception of Summer Nats, so don't give me that shit. But they had turned around and made a big deal of it on the media.
Saying it was disrespectful.
It was like, oh, this is a family event. Like, kids were around. I'm like, I didn't see any kids. And if you're taking kids to Summer Nats, that's on you, man. That's like a boys' weekend. Like, that's a boys' event. And if you're taking kids to that, knowing full well, like, how it is.
It's like a big bucks party or something.
Exactly right. And I'm like, that's kind of on you. Like, if you want to take kids to Denny Ute Muster, this is what you're going to see. Yeah. Like, don't, you either, take responsibility or don't.
But they're going to hear some fucking language. They're going to see some drunk cunts.
Exactly right. Like, it's like next level. It's not a kid-friendly environment, So anyway, they made a big song and dance about it. And then they had said in the news article that we had a lifetime ban. I'm like, all right, whatever. But yeah, I made the news.
Oh, no.
For getting a lifetime ban from Summer Nats.
No such thing as bad publicity.
I know, right? But anyway, I'm like, how do you get a lifetime ban? Like crazy. So yeah, I think they were like, we do not condone strippers. All strippers are banned from Summer Nats. Oh, fuck off.
Because you were there from one of the clubs, so it wasn't sanctioned by Summer Nats.
Yeah, okay. But we never promoted, like the venue never promoted Summer Nats, and we never promoted the venue. Yeah. Like we weren't walking around in like logoed t-shirts. We actually had no t-shirts, so I don't know how they were, like, but I think it was like they hadn't not long changed hands or something. But I'm like, man, if that's what if that's what you want to ride, instead of, talking about the elephant in the room, which is that guy who died, like, fuck off.
Yeah, so you think that was just a diversion?
I think so, absolutely. Yeah. They gave that very little, of course they had reported on it, but the owners of Summer Nats gave that very little airtime. I doubt they'll overhear this, but, fuck you guys.
For sure. So in getting back to your personal journey, so, like, you are working in the strip clubs, but and you've done the glamour sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then are you what comes next in this one? Is like there's camming, or is there like?
Yeah. So I had been webcamming the whole time through, pretty much as well. So that had been run concurrently as well. And then I kind of was at a space in my life where I really not had lost the plot, and I'll find out, I was to find out later why I was like having such a crazy time in my life. I was drinking a lot at that stage. Like I was working a lot and drinking a lot to get through the shifts. So I'm like, I'm going to go to America. I'm going to go and be a porn star.
Yeah. And
I hate using that word, but I'm going to go film adult. I'm going to be an adult actress. So I had contacted, I had been to AVNs in the January and sort of spoken to a few people.
Just for, I don't really know. So who's AV?
Adult Video Network.
Okay.
So it's like a big adult porn expo over in Las Vegas. So I had sort of spoken to one agency and they're like, yeah, we'll take you on. When I got back to Australia, they're like, no, we don't want you. So I had spoken to another agency and they're like, yes, come over. So, yeah, and then I started shooting. My second scene was with Brazzers, and yeah, it was wild. And then that was it from there on in.
And it's not generally that easy for most people, or you think you just did the groundwork by going to the conventions and meeting the right people?
It was all about sort of just getting that connection. Like, look, anyone can turn around and email an agent and just be like, hey, here's my photos. Can you book me? Am I bookable?
Yep.
So, it was awesome. I went over there with a whole group of girlfriends and I was able to live in LA and Vegas, for a few months and, really live a life that is what books and movies are made of. And it was wild. Like, I had to pinch myself going to like exclusive clubs and partying, and it was so crazy just living in LA as some like little Australian from backwater Frankston. Like, it was wild. And it was such a great experience, So that first trip was so amazing. Yep. So amazing. So
can you only, being an Australian, can you only stay for 3 months, or that's sort of how it works, something like that?
So if you're on a tourist visa, yes, you can only stay for 3 months. I decided after sort of the 8 weeks, I was getting a bit homesick, and LA is really different. The food is different. Like, it's expensive to live in. And this is 6 years ago. Like, it was really expensive to live in then. I hate to think what it is now. But, even all the luxuries I was afforded, like I was afforded a beautiful room and a really nice, it's not a model house, but it is a model house. I was given a car to drive, a Mercedes, which is really nice. So I was afforded a lot of luxuries that, most girls who go over there or actually live in America are not afforded. So I was very, very privileged.
Is that because you had the cover work and all that sort of stuff back here, or what was it?
No, I just had a really great agent who was just really lovely and really, really great guy. But it was interesting because I came from Australia being a somebody in Melbourne and in Australia-wide. Like, I'd done covers, like I was a Miss Nude World and, all that kind of stuff. I got over there and I was a fucking nobody. They didn't care.
Small fish in a big pond.
Exactly right. And I'm like, they're like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm the current Miss Nude World. And they're like, what is that? Yeah. Oh, I'm a showgirl. They're like, we don't give a fuck. Oh, okay, cool. And it was really humbling. Like, I was knocked down like 4 or 5 pegs.
Yep.
And I then realised that I was actually no one in the grand scheme of the world. So, it was a really humbling experience, which is good.
But you've got that little X factor of being Australian as well, which I know that might be slowly dying off in just any professional capacity in US, but it gives you a point of difference.
At the time, yeah, it was, they do love Australians. We're easy to work with. We're not difficult, generally speaking, and we're all pretty chilled and laid back. So that was a big plus being Australian.
Dig the accent.
They do dig the accent. I find the Australian accent quite grating. When I was over there after, a few weeks of all you're hearing is American accents, where you do hear an Australian, you're like, ew. I remember being like in a store and I heard 2 Australian guys talking and I'm like, oh my God, stop. It's hurting my ears. Shut the fuck up. So yeah, and then I didn't say anything. I'm like, please leave. Stop talking. I'm like, do I sound like that? I sound like that.
We do sound like that.
We do sound like that. So, but they couldn't get over, like, I have a foul mouth on me at the best of times. And they're just like, you swear so much. You look so nice and so well put together. And I'm like dropping the F-bomb everywhere. And they're just like, oh my God, if you drop the C-bomb, they have a heart attack. And you may as well have taken their firstborn if you drop the C-bomb. It's wild.
Yeah, it's so different to our customs here where it's very accepted.
Yeah, and they're like, you guys drink a lot. I'm like, I've had 2 drinks. How is this drinking a lot? Like, define a lot, So they just think Australians are wild over there as far as they're concerned. It might have changed a bit. It's been a while since I've been there, but...
Yeah, I think... Each year that goes on, there's more and more Aussies travelling and the novelty wears off,
Yeah, and the world's becoming smaller and smaller, so yeah.
But that gives you a point of difference when you're over there, and I guess there's other Aussies there. Did you find that other people were sort of welcoming within that industry, or other Aussies in general that were over there?
I didn't really come across any other Australians over there. Like, the 2 over there at the moment, like I had never shot with Angela White and I haven't met her. But like over there at the moment, you've got Savannah Bond and Charlie Ford, and I hadn't met those girls. They immigrated over there after I had been. So I'd sort of been and gone, and then that was it. So, I mean, there was Yasmin Scott and Kiki Vitas, but again, they were just before me. And then I sort of went over in my own little time period, and then, Savannah and Charlie went over afterwards. So, but it's a really big decision to move. You have to pick up your whole life and move. And like we were chatting about before, to move to LA, like at that stage, I would have had to have taken 2 horses, and they're 50 grand a pop to ship over, like fly them over. It's a 15-hour flight. And they charge per kilo. And I've got very heavy horses. Like I've got a Clyde and a Shire, and they're big draft horses. Yep. It's a lot of money. And in California too, like it's hot.
Yeah.
And these are cold climate horses. I mean, I would have fried my horses, man. I'm like, they're more important than living in LA.
Yeah. And I think aside from the animals,
Yeah.
LA, it's a great place to visit. It's not somewhere where I'd think it's a great place to live, personally.
No, the healthcare is like insane. Like if you have to go to hospital, it's like you mortgage your house.
Yeah.
It was just wild. The food was expensive. To eat what we would consider to be shitty food from the supermarket over there is considered their organic premium food. It's been sitting in airtight, light tight, like shipping containers, and have been shipped from one side of America to the other. I'm like, it's trash. It's trash.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know how people afford to live. Like, if you don't have bulk money in LA, and I mean, they've got fuck you money that I've never seen in Australia. If you don't have bulk money in LA, you just don't live.
And it's a different kind of place as well. Like I'm sure it's fun going to all the parties, doing all the stuff for a while, but fuck, man, I'd get sick of that.
I felt like what I did find about LA, which I found was really unique and different from Australia, is that in LA, people want to be your friend or be seen with you because you are of a higher social standing. So they want to get what they can from you. Everything's a transaction. Like you don't hang out with people just because they're cool, just because you get along. It's because they can do something for you.
They're trying to level up.
They can level up off you. And, you want to be seen with the right people and all that kind of stuff. And that is very much LA. Whereas here in Australia, I find that people are like, well, I'm jealous of that person, so I'll just do what I can to ruin their career. So it's a bit
more toxic.
It's worse. I find like Australian culture from that point of view is worse. But I think if you just like take LA for what it is, that's what the culture is. You don't have any deep connections with people. It's always very superficial. And it is what it is. As long as you walk in there with open eyes, it can't hurt you.
Yeah, that's it. It's an interesting take on it. We do have like tall poppy syndrome here, but I think it's a little bit more transparent with the fact that you hang out with someone because you like them, not because they're going to elevate your social status.
Exactly right. So I feel like if Australia had a little bit of that, like, hanging out with people who would better you, I think taking a little leaf out of that book may not be a bad thing instead of trying to cut people down who are better than you.
Yeah.
Level up, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Like the positive from it is let's both level up together rather than, this person's doing better than me, so fuck them, and and I kind of wish their downfall.
Exactly right. And it's like, let's cancel that person. Fuck off.
The whole cancelling thing, it's I don't.
That's a whole nother topic. Saving the world topic.
It's a whole new thing. So you decided at this point in time that you didn't want to stay in LA. You want to come back to Melbourne. You've been there for a few months, but you went once.
Yeah, so I went over to the States a couple of times, and then I decided to try my hand in Europe, and that was the Wild West.
So
Europe.
So in the US, I'm tipping that California, Vegas, because of the laws, is probably the porn capital.
Yeah.
But where do you go in Europe? I mean, there's a lot of different countries.
It was Budapest and Prague mainly, and a little bit in London, but not too much. But it was mainly, Budapest and Prague, and they run their own game there. It's different. It is the Wild West, and you need to... your agent isn't as instrumental in keeping you safe and choosing the right scenes for you.
Right. Sorry to cut you off. I'm just trying to get a comparison. So in LA, your agent books you a scene. It's a proper production thing. Yeah. They're going to go with you on your shoot. You always feel safe.
No, they don't come with you.
They don't go with you.
No.
But you feel more safe in that capacity.
So the scenes are very professional. Like you can have quite a few people on set. So, you've got your producer, you've got your video guys, your audio person, hair and makeup. Like it is a whole production. Like it is like going to work.
Yeah.
The male talent's really respectful, and there's no room for being a dickhead in the industry because you get called out pretty quickly and you don't last very long because it is such a vulnerable industry. And in the adult industry, the female has the final say. Look, I'm not saying that there's not companies that are out there producing that are shady. Absolutely. But I didn't come in at that level. Like, I came in straight off the bat. Like, my agent was very, very revered in keeping his model safe, and he was very outspoken. Some productions wouldn't work with him because he was so prickly to deal with.
He had a high standard.
Absolutely. So I worked really well under that particular agent. I really appreciated that. Some of the work, sometimes it bit me in the ass, and some companies just wouldn't book me because of that agent. Yeah. That's fine. I don't really care. I wasn't hungry for work, so.
Yeah. So it all worked out for you. You went straight in and you started shooting pretty much with some of the biggest studios straight away.
Absolutely. So I was very, very blessed. I was very fortunate. I didn't have to go in and like crazy earn my stripes. So, oh my God, you know what? I got sunburnt the other day, and my lips, I like cracked my lip, and it's so sore. Anyway, so off topic there.
So Budapest, and so now you're going to Europe, and you just said it's different. You've had a much better experience in the US, I'm tipping.
So Europe is the Wild West. So they have a lot of girls coming in from countries like, say, Russia and Ukraine, and these girls come from a very impoverished background, and so the things they are willing to deal with are far more than what, say, someone like myself is willing to deal with. So, those girls will tolerate a lot more when the production asks for things that are past their boundaries. They're more likely to go, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Whereas I'll turn around and go, jam it up your ass, you're not getting that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So those girls are more not desperate, but they're willing to go that extra yard, and when they are pushed, they don't want to say.
They don't want the confrontation. You know, for them, it is easier just to do the work, because they're scared they're not going to get paid. Yeah. They shut up, they put up, and they do the work. Yeah. And, I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that's just the way it is. So.
Yeah. So, it sounds like it's not a nice place to work. How long did it take you to figure out that wasn't where you wanted to be as well?
So my first trip to Europe was really good fun. It was a little bit tricky, sort of navigating that. The productions are a little bit more like, oh, we want a little bit more out of you. You're like, I really don't want to do that. So, and I mean a little bit more out of you from the point of view of, and I'm going to be a bit crass here, that instead of shooting just a normal boy-girl scene, they're like, well, let's do anal. Yeah. And you're like, don't really want to do that. It's pushing the boundaries of where you're comfortable. And I had a situation, sorry.
No, you go. Yeah.
Sorry, I just cut you off. I had a situation where I don't film group. So I'll film, a boy, girl. So, and there's very clear boundaries, but I won't film group stuff. Well, they refer to it as gangbang, but whatever. And that's simply because that was my line in the sand. I didn't want to be depicted like that, because I find that those scenes are generally quite hard, and it's not a light that I wanted to be depicted in. You know what I mean? Like enough. I didn't want to do. I consider it degrading. Yeah. Wild, I know, but and it just so happened that one of the productions was like, oh well, we've got 6 of you there. I'm like, no, and you're not paying me for that. So that as the scenes get harder and harder, the pay increases. So, and I'm like, and you're only paying me for a boy girl. No, I'm not doing, 6. It's not happening. And it was like, boy, girl. So it wasn't unbalanced, but I'm like, that's not a thing. Oh, well, we'll remove actors. I'm like, no, I'm the only one with the problem. Don't remove the other actors, because they need to get paid. Their scene gets cancelled. I'm removing myself so you can keep the other actors. I'm not cutting their lunch, Yeah.
And I could imagine that is something that in America is probably pretty, okay, here's your email, this is what's happening, here's the breakdown. Yeah. Today is going to be this and this. Yeah. But then they're like, and we'll throw in a bit of anal as well. And you're like, no.
Yeah, that's it, And the prep work that goes into it, like I think my last trip to Europe really cooked me because of the prep work. You don't want clean up on R3. You have to make sure that R3 is clear. You know what I mean? So, and that's where I just used the bathroom before. And you're like, oh, the bathroom's under renovation. And I'm like, mate, I've lived in a model house. where they have had several douches on the windowsill because you have several girls in the house and they're all shooting whatever scenes. So, you know, like I said, clean up on R3 is nothing.
That's not the glamorous side that we see on the videos.
No. So, and we're like athletes. So my regimen over there, like I'm booked back to back. Like I have to build in days. I think my record was 15 days straight. And by the end of it, you get weird. You know, you're like, don't talk to me, don't look at me, no one come near me. Like you get really bizarre. And it's just because you've got someone in your personal space, like up in your grill, you've got video guys leaning over you and everyone is like feeling like they're on top of you, literally. And, you know, in various degrees. By the end of it, you're like, don't come near me. I don't want to hear another person breathe near me. So, but I mean, the diet I go on. So, you know, if I'm shooting, you can never really shoot anal 2 days in a row. One, because of the physical, you know, there's physical injury that happens with it. And, you know, you've got physical limitations. I think my limit was 3 days back to back. And even then, that's unheard of. Like even Adriana Chechik wasn't shooting 3 of those scenes back to back. But this is unusual circumstances. So, you know, my diet is crazy. I only eat, you know, I won't eat from 2 o'clock the day before onwards. Like I don't eat from then.
When you're doing 3 days in a row, then you're not eating for 4 days.
No.
Yeah.
Or the timing is, and the food I'm eating is very, very, and everyone's body is different. So, you know, you're not supposed to have coffee in the morning because it makes your colon sweat and it leaves you susceptible to tearing, micro-tearing, which is wild. So, you know, it's just the way the body's designed. Like this is everyone a little anatomy class, but should we go into it? Is that a thing? All right. So the way your butthole works is that it doesn't lubricate. So you have to add lubrication to that. And it's not foolproof, you know, like lube dries up or stuff like that. So you end up with micro-tearing. And if you're not careful, then, you know, 2 days after micro-tearing, then you're having to use Vaseline to seal those tears. And it's wild. The things we go through, it's insane. And then, you know, I'm not eating. So in the morning, I might be lucky and I might have some avocado or some scrambled eggs. And I really shouldn't be eating in the morning, but I have to have something. So it's a very light, easy meal to digest. Come lunchtime, I might have a cup of rice, but I'm already halfway through filming the scene for that day. So there's no risk of, you know, clean up on R3. So, but also too, when you're douching out to make sure you're all clean, is that you're all flushing out the good and bad bacteria. So it causes gut issues and some are more susceptible than others. So I was actually douching with like, I would get like, you know, what is the stuff? Like, you know, like, Yakult type stuff in my water and then douching with like, you know, not just tap water. Yeah, that's it, to help, you know, and it wasn't just like tap water because you don't know what's in that water. Like I was buying bottled water and flushing with that because by the end of it, like your gut's cooked. Yeah. You know, everything about you is stripped out. You've been doing vigorous activity for hours on end. Like some scenes are 14 hours a day. You're filming actual physical activity of that for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours.
Wow.
And so you're like an athlete. It's insane. And then you're not eating on top of that. So by the end of it, you're hangry. And, you know, it's
very physically demanding. So I'm guessing this is a reason why they don't do those back-to-back sort of scenes.
You can't.
Yeah, and you learnt that the hard way, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, it was actually just as COVID happened, and they had closed all the borders in Europe, and Europe doesn't work on closed borders. It was really an odd situation. And it was a case of I was contracted for Vixen Media Group for a group, you know, for a section of scenes. And they're like, you're contracted, you have to do these scenes. And I could have walked away from it, but it's not professional. So anyway, we were like jamming these scenes in, and it just so happened that I had shot for DDF, which is a different company, anal. The next day was Tushy Raw. And so it was just 3 days back to back. And that particular performer, there's a bit of a story with him, but that particular performer was a difficult performer to work with, you know, because I don't think he'd had a lot of sleep, and his equipment didn't work, so he had to have help with the equipment working.
Right. So what is that like injections or
yeah,
like pumps?
He had to inject, and he wasn't a performer who usually injected, so I don't know what was going on with him those 2 days. But I was working with him 3 days in a row, and that was unusual because they had closed borders, they couldn't get different talent, and that's what it was. So. But yeah, it made it very difficult for me, as a female performer, because if you don't have a male performer that is ready to go, it actually causes damage to the woman. So,
For sure.
And after 3 days of that, I'm like, I literally had to pack my arsehole in its own suitcase on the way home. I felt like that anyway. It was fucked.
You needed to break it up with some girl scenes or something.
Yeah, well, it just happened that's the way the cookie crumbled, and we had to get those scenes done. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got them done. And as it was, I caught the last flight out of Budapest. Like, I almost got trapped in Budapest, and I rang the Australian consulate in Vienna. I'm like, what happens if that flight gets cancelled? Because they were cancelling flights left, right and centre. I think at Budapest airport, like a handful of flights ran, everything was cancelled because they were shutting borders. And they're like, oh, well, you're just going to have to stay in Budapest. I'm like, this is a fascist country. These people are happy with a banana for Christmas. I can't fucking live here. I don't know when it's going to be open again. So I almost got stuck, but I got out, which is good, So anyway.
Crazy times. So you did mention the male talent, and this intrigues me. Like the old wives' tale that there's like fluffers on set and stuff. Is that a real thing?
That's a load of shit.
It is.
It is a load of shit.
So they just have to be ready at all. So it must be hard for some of them. But no pun intended.
Okay, literally, sometimes it's not hard for some people, know. But look, you need to be wired different. So guys who film porn are not your average Joe citizen. Let me just...
Yep.
Guys, the guys who film porn are freaks of nature. They are the exception to the rule, okay? It's not normal to stay hard for hours on end. It's not normal to come on demand. If you have that skill set, that's amazing. You are the 0.01% of society that can do that. So, yes, I feel
so
like...
they've got... So these guys just have to be ready to go. They have to be a different kind of breed of human.
And you don't... I mean, we've got no list of people we don't want to shoot with, which is fine. But at the end of the day, you can't just say no to everyone. Like, you have to be able to be working with other talent. And some of the talent you don't find attractive. So you still have to be ready to go. And they shoot photos, which is photos for, however many hours. And then you have to relax and everything just sort of goes back to its original stand. And then you have to shoot video again. And you're going from position to position. And some guy's breathing over your neck with the video going, all right, we're ready for the pop shop now. You've got 2-3 minutes. That's it. Let's go. And you have to come on demand. Like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
That is not normal.
It's not a normal industry, let's be honest.
No,
it's a very
exactly right.
it's normal, it's part of life, but at the same time you can't it's not like every other job. You've got to be talented in some respects.
No, exactly right. And I think it's like every scene really relies heavily on the male talent. They need to be able to perform and keep themselves together upstairs mentally, but then also keep in mind of the angles of the camera. So they need to keep one eye on the camera guy and put the girl in the right position so they can see what they need to see, and get the right shot. So I don't think male performers get enough credit in that industry.
Financially, are they paid enough, do you think?
They're paid less. They're paid sometimes half.
Yeah.
Sometimes even less than half.
But when you talk about sort of big name porn stars, like I couldn't tell you any dudes, like I'm guessing, but so they don't get that. They're not known for why people are consuming this content.
Yeah. So you've got guys who are the exception to the rule, like sort of Kieran Lee and Johnny Sins, like they command a very high pay rate because they are so popular. But the scene is never really about the guy. So they are the exception to the rule again. So they are in the top elite percentile of performers. So, they command high rates. Sometimes like Kieran Lee and Geordie get paid double what I would get paid. Right. So that is the unusual exception to the rule. So
there you go. I don't know those guys.
You clearly don't consume the product enough. But this is what I mean. Like you don't watch it for the guy.
Yeah.
You watch it for people watch it for the girl usually. So the main consumer is men.
Yeah. And so now the whole industry has changed a little bit. Like, obviously, there's still going to be that kind of studio porn that you're talking about, but the whole OnlyFans thing is really put the power back in the performer's hands.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's good and bad too. Like, I feel like it's a bit of a catch-22 because the workload on OnlyFans is 50 times more than when I was shooting studio. So when I was shooting studio, I'd wake up at 8 a.m., probably a bit earlier. I'd have my coffee when I shouldn't have. I'd watch the squirrels fight on the backyard, on the fence in the backyard, and then I'd go to work. It was amazing. And then once I had finished my scene at, 5, sometimes 7, 8 at night, depending if it was a long one,
Yep.
I would come home, I'd eat, and I'd go back to it. Again, there was a level of being able to decompress, but with OnlyFans, you're on there 24/7. And fans have access to you 24/7. And we're seeing a shift now where some fans are very entitled in, the way they approach you. And
even if they've only spent $10 a month or whatever.
Absolutely. And they're like, well, I want you to do this, this, and this when they order a custom video. I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this, man, but I physically cannot do what you're asking me to do. Like, it's impossible.
Yeah.
But they're like, but why not? Will you meet me in person? No, I don't. But why not? Because I don't.
Yeah.
So most of them are pretty respectful. Like, I don't give fans like that the time of day because I just won't tolerate it. And it's incredibly rude. Like, go and harass somebody else who will tolerate your shit. I'm not going to tolerate it.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate from that point of view. But they do exist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like now you can find your audience, communicate directly to them without the studio, without all that stuff. But yeah, like you said, negatives and positives, because those guys can hound you all the time.
Yeah.
And they can ask more than when you've lost the middleman to an extent.
Yeah, to be a buffer.
Yeah.
So, and you don't turn off. So you're constantly, it's in your phone. Like, you don't get a chance to walk away from set. And the work disparity now is it's so heavy on like TikToks and, especially with TikToks and Instagram and Twitter and creating content to advertise the other content, which is like a small portion of the work now. And I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. I don't want to do 50 TikTok dances and I don't want to do 50, TikTok accounts because they all get burned and then you've got to create new ones. And I don't want to do that, man. I just want to perform. So I guess I'm a bit of a dinosaur now where I'm not at the forefront of it anymore, and I don't think I really want to be.
No. Well, it's totally changed from the camming thing, I think, was different, and there wasn't social media as much. But so now I'm guessing there's also a million other people out there pushing their own OnlyFans, so you've got to stay on top of it because if you don't, someone else will, and then...
Well, it's no longer special. It's no longer taboo. I think it's, very much more...
normalised.
Normalised now, and... it's a bit of a catch-22. It's no longer special. So, instead of having people that, these glamazons who were, on the cover of Penthouse magazine and stuff like that, were Penthouse Pets and Maximum, FHM, it's just average, average people, average girls, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but now the talent pool is swollen. Like, it is huge, and it is now McDonald's.
Yeah.
It is no longer fine dining. It is McDonald's.
Yeah.
And that's been good and bad. So, I can't see I can't say whether it's good or bad. It just is.
It is.
So,
yeah. But there's got to be younger people coming up now that just think that that's their career path. They don't want to go down shooting studio. They don't want to go to the physical strip clubs. They just go, I'm going to do this. And I think, what I could gather, they probably don't understand how much work would go into building that fan base.
Exactly right. And look, like I said, there is fallout from that. What happens, I mean, yeah, fair enough, okay, OnlyFans is behind a paywall, but what happens when your stuff gets leaked online?
Which does happen.
Exactly right. And no digital content is safe at all. Like, it gets leaked. If you think your stuff doesn't get leaked, you're an idiot. And whatever. But, I mean... even if, like we were saying before, like when we were chatting before the podcast, like even if my stuff does get leaked, I've got so much stuff on Pornhub anyway that's free accessible, whatever, and if people are so desperate to find it in backwater channels, whatever, go find that, man. If you don't want to pay the $9 a month subscription, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't care.
It is interesting, like, because I've never really thought about the financial side of it. So, like the ones that you have done on the bigger streaming services, that you've been paid pretty well from the big studios, so they use it as well. I'm not. Okay.
We don't get paid as much as what you think.
Okay, well, you've been okay, but
we've been paid to perform. We've been paid for that day.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, but then those guys are paying you, and they're paying, and there's a professional setup, so they need to make their money back. So they have the paywall, and then do they eventually put them on the free services, or how does
They can do. They can put snippets of it on Pornhub. So they'll put probably 80% of the scene on Pornhub, and they will just leave the good part at the end off. Right. So you have to sign up. I had a lot of stuff on Pornhub until Pornhub did a massive cleanup, and then I had a lot of stuff removed, which is awesome. But there's stuff on there I can't get rid of. I've signed my life away. I wish I could get it all off. Yeah. I wish, but it's just not. It's not going to happen. No. You know, it just is. Do I regret filming porn? No. Could I have it all removed? Yes. Yes. I would like to have it all removed, because it makes it very difficult to step into a new chapter, a non-adult chapter in your life. So there are repercussions for it. I knew there would always be repercussions, so I'm not like, oh, there'll be no repercussions, it's fine. But yeah, it does make me socially outcast in the bigger civilian world, you know? Yeah,
but like you said before, the stigma has kind of gone, and
it's reduced.
Look, you are an intelligent person, so I think you understood the repercussions that were there.
Absolutely.
And you studied, and you had a backup to what you did. I think the concern is with the younger people that they think that that's it and that's all they're going to do.
It'll be fine, and then they'll just go, and it doesn't happen. But I'm going to say that even now, like, it hasn't been too bad, but even like going into DJing now, like I've been playing, doing my thing, but I find that even from my Isabelle Deltore Instagram, it's verified, all that kind of stuff, and I will go on like other established DJs like profiles. I can tell you that out of 100, 99% of them will not follow me back. Because they see my page. Well, this is the assumption. Yeah. I mean, I haven't released any music or anything like that, so I'm probably, again, a nobody in a big pond in this grand scheme of things internationally. But they're just like, oh, she's just another influencer. So I come with that tag. And even when I was being booked, last year, it was a curiosity booking, and that's what we were really mindful of. And trying not to encourage that. So when I was being booked to play, it was like, okay, do not refer to me as an adult performer. Yeah. You know, I'm not there to do...
You're not flashing your tits. You're playing music.
I'm playing music, and I'm not there to do like a bunny, a Playboy bunny mansion party thing. Like don't do that. So we were very mindful to tell venues not to do that. But they still book me as an influencer. Yeah. It's the same as the people who are on Love Island or whatever other, maths or whatever. It's that curiosity booking, so...
But you still do come with a large Instagram or social media following, which they're also liking as well.
Yeah, I think venues are a little bit confused with that, and I'm probably shooting myself in the foot here. So if you look at the stats on my, say, Instagram, because that's what sometimes they book me on, I'm like, it's a bit silly. But I would say that a big chunk of my fans are Australian, and, in Europe and American. Yep. So when you look at my stats, people who buy or consume a digital product, which is my background, can't fly over to a venue, and I get a few people coming, but I'm not established as an independent musician yet. So I play a bit of a weird role. I bring an element of awareness to an event or a venue, but I'm not there to be like a promoter and provide, 50 people, pump 50 people through the door. That's not my function. No. So,
and I think that that's something that a lot of promoters need to get their heads around. That, look, I find it with this podcast even, I could have somebody who's got a really big following that doesn't translate into views and streams.
No, exactly right.
It means that you're in the right direction, but does that necessarily mean numbers? Not necessarily.
No, not necessarily. So, and also some people too, like... if you're talking about, this is a digital platform. So I would expect, that I'm hoping will correlate. But if you're turning around and expecting, 100 people to come and see me play, I'm not known for music. I'm known for something else. And, I'm not saying that in time I won't be known for music, but I'm I just started playing 12 months ago. Like, I'm no different to any other DJ that started playing 12 months ago that hasn't released music and is still trying to cut their teeth.
Yep.
Like, and I think that was something that really stressed me out, is that the expectations, because I was such, you know, I was such a public figure in Melbourne, you know, in Australian terms, that I think venues were expecting, you know, something that was not attainable for me as a new DJ.
Yeah.
You know.
And once they get their head around that and they can accept that you're just there to play music, then it's
Yeah.
all the best. The other thing I guess you got to take into consideration is that your fan base or the people, your followers, I'm sure they love seeing sexy photos and stuff.
Yeah.
But when you try and pivot that into something else, are they going to be interested? And I'm guessing not so much.
It's a fine line. Like, I found, and I had this conversation with my agent, that, you know, we tried very, very hard to really pull me away from being like a curiosity booking or, you know, whatever, and, you know, just being a titty DJ, for lack of a better word. And I'm not saying I'm the most technical DJ out there, but, you know, I mix my own stuff. Like, I don't just press play and dance around. Like, I actually mix, you know, and we wanted to pull me away from that overly sexualized look. God damn, it hurt my engagement. Like, it fucking tanked my Instagram. And I'm just like, dude, like, what is going on? You know, and because those people were there for bikini photos, they're not there to see me covered from head to toe. They don't want to see it.
But that's the catch-22. Like, when you say that other musicians or DJs, fucking artists, aren't following you back because they're seeing the bikini stuff and they're going, this chick's not for real. Is she actually? What is she doing? Is this Paris Hilton stuff? You know.
Yes.
So you gotta.
Yeah, exactly right. You know, and I was constantly on a knife's edge. Like, it was destroying me in the end. You know, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is horrible. Like, I would finish nearly, you know, I would say 8 times out of 10 the set I would finish, and I would just leave being crushed, going, you know, my set wasn't up to standard, and the standards I had imposed on myself was just unattainable for someone at that, you know, at that stage in DJing out in public, you know, and it was just, I didn't want to be known as the titty DJ. So I'm like, I need to be better. I need to be a better DJ. And I just, you know, and it was a catch-22. I needed to be out and playing more to get that. I don't have a set of 3000s at home. You know, I've got a console, man. I have a console. It's a good one, but I have a console. It's different, you know. So I don't have 14 grand for a Pioneer setup.
Yeah. No, that's true. But you got to put in the hours and you got to practice. But there's nothing that is going to compare to actually playing in front of live people, because you can do whatever you want in your bedroom, in your fucking studio, but then you need to go and actually get that real life experience.
And I found that I was leaving every set. Like, when the first couple of gigs I played true. All right, should I wind back? I feel like I should wind back.
Yeah, go back.
All right, so let's talk about how I started DJing, because people are like, you just started talking about that. I'm like, all right, let's leave.
I think I know how you started.
Yeah, let's pave it away. All right, so for all my showgirl music and stuff like that, I would cut my own music. Admittedly, it was on Audacity, you know, garbage. But I was making all my own show music, and it's got a sequence, you know, a start, a middle, and an end. When I stopped competing, I really missed that creative process. And I'm like, can I DJ? Maybe, maybe not. So I actually went into Union Heights, and I spoke to Frank and Wolsey when he was there. I'm like, I think I want to DJ, but I don't know how to start. Like, you know, how do I go about it? And Wolsey was a legend. He's like, right, you go here, you go to, you know, United DJs, go see Kieran, like, they'll teach you all that stuff and, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, awesome, thank you so much. Super supportive, the most amazing people. And I'm just like, okay, maybe I can do this. So I went to United DJs and I learned the very basics. And I showed some interest in vinyl because I was under the impression that to be taken with any kind of legitimacy, I had to learn to DJ on vinyl first. And I was adamant about that.
Right.
It's not the case.
No.
But anyway, so, you know, that was very much like, okay, scratch and stuff like that. I have the coordination of an egg. And I just like, I know it's drill after drill after drill. And I love going to like the DMCs. Like I didn't go last year, unfortunately, but there's nothing better than DMCs. And I think it's amazing. And I actually did, when I was in LA last, I actually did some private lessons with beat junkies and stuff like that.
Amazing.
Which is so good. I've got a set of vinyl at home. And I found it was really soul crushing. And I mean that from the point of view that I was really struggling. You need dexterity, like you need to actually be talented in different ways. Like, you know, and it was crazy and I just couldn't nail it. And I just felt like I was, you know, I'd be okay. And then I would just stop DJing and I'm like, oh, I'm no good at this. And then I'd pick it back up again and then I'm no good again. And I was backwards and forwards. And then I had a friend of mine go, just go digital. What are you doing? Just go digital. Like no one has vinyl anymore.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to play some big festival sort of shows and stuff like that, to take your records is really pretty, like in this day and age, I'm sure people do it, but it adds an extra element of hard fucking...
The only DJ I've seen play vinyl was Papa Smurf at Space. That is the only person I have seen play vinyl. It was amazing, but I sort of got off that unrealistic bandwagon and was like, all right, maybe scratching is not for me.
So at this point in time, you were going to go down more the hip-hop route?
I wanted to compete in DMCs. That was my thing. I'm like, yeah, I want to compete. Even if I come last, it'll be a laugh. You know, it'll be hilarious. You know, what people are going to be like, you can't scratch. And I come out, and even if the routine was garbage, it would have been funny, you know, whatever. And I don't mean to put any shade on the whole competitive and creative process, but I thought it would have been kind of fun, you know, so it would have been kind of cool. But
then you flipped it to more of the techno stuff?
Well, what had happened is that, and I want to be very clear on this, I think there was a little bit of expectation because I had started on vinyl and stuff like that, and people thought I was going to play hip-hop. And I would like to make this very, very clear. My hip-hop palette is very 90s and it's obscure. Like I'm talking Dr. Octagon, obscure, like non-fiction, weird stuff, right? It is not. And then so I've got a massive gap from like, you know, the early 2000s onwards, and I don't have enough of a musical palette in modern hip hop that would have done it any justice.
No, but you've got to play the music that you like.
Exactly right. And I didn't want to burn the old school stuff that I like. Yeah. You know. So
and you do love your Aussie stuff as well.
I do. I quietly, you know what? Everyone loved Bice Bees Beeswax. Yeah. That was a vibe.
Well, I've seen you with photos, and you've got your high goon shirts on. You've got your lazy grey shirts, 750 Rebels, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. You know, and those guys are amazing. And I love my Melbourne aggressive hip hop. And I would say one of my all-time favorite like Melbourne hip hop, artists is Autism. Yeah. Is Ruckus. That guy's amazing. Mm-hmm. So good. You know, and I just, you know, his tracks was really raw, like pretty hectic. I don't think he's recorded anything since forever. I love that. I love that aggressive Melbourne hip hop. It's a vibe.
It is, and it's pretty unique to, like, not unique. It's obviously happening all over the country, but we do have our own sort of sound down here in Melbourne, I think.
Melbourne definitely does have its own sound, and it is definitely a lot more gritty. I think it's a heavier sound, for lack of a better word. I find Sydney a very, I don't know. I mean, you listen to guys like, you know, say, for example, like Bliss and, you know, and Esso, and they're a lot more consumable, you know. And I don't get me wrong, love those guys, amazing. But it's not gritty. It's not grungy. It's not Melbourne grunge. And I like that Melbourne gritty hip hop.
So now we've established that you're not playing that kind of music. No. What kind of music are you playing?
All right. So I was like, okay, so I also used to dabble in like the Melbourne rave scene. And I'm talking like hard energy, old school, you know, again, like early 2000s kind of stuff.
Hard Candy, that sort of thing?
Yeah, Hard Candy, PhD, or, you know, Base Station, all that kind of stuff.
Did you have fat pants?
I did not. I had slips, like over-the-knee slips. But I did not have fat pants.
Did you shuffle? Did you used to shuffle?
I was before shuffle. I was like one of those candy kids. It was different again. Like it was before the Melbourne shuffle. Geez, I'm Jurassic.
I'm the same age. I was just
So
remember that
Jurassic.
crossover. Yeah.
Damn, I remember like Hardware and Pure Flow and stuff down at the Docklands, at the fruit markets there before people realised it was full of asbestos. They had no security. There was no security guard there. There was like one guy at the door and they had like these massive airport hangars and everyone was just lit having the best time. Like there was no issues. There was no problems. It was a different scene there.
Yeah.
You know.
The drugs weren't as aggressive.
I think the drugs were not garbage. I think that was different. I mean, look, it was all made in someone's bathtub somewhere. But I feel like the drugs now are just beyond trash. I mean, I haven't taken Melbourne Australian drugs. Like, it's just trash. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot barge pole. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's just, anyway, what else? I diverge. Yeah, I was like, I downloaded a whole heap of like trance and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, shit, I can't play this anywhere. I can't play it anywhere. How am I going to get out and play? And I'm like, all right, well, maybe, house was a little bit too slow for me, but tech house was, it was an acceptable compromise. It was an acceptable compromise. So I love my deep bass, and that goes hand in hand with, listening to bands like Pantera and stuff like that, that really dirty, grungy, like, Melbourne hip hop and that, deep, dirty Melbourne bass, that it's all in the same sort of sandpit. So I found that the tech house I was playing was super underground. I didn't know. I thought it was normal. I thought everyone listened to that kind of tech house. I started playing out and people were like, what is this shit? Like, what do you mean, what is this shit? It's like top 20 Beatport. What's wrong with you people? And they didn't know. They just didn't know what I was playing. And they're like, you're a little bit too underground. I'm like, what? And I ended up having that issue again and again and again, and I didn't learn, And, we were chatting about this earlier with, being signed to agency like Lucky Entertainment. I was very fortunate. I had signed with Lucky Entertainment, quite early on. And they did their job so well. They were such a great agency. Like I was playing every weekend, weekend in, weekend out. But the venues that, majority of the venues in Melbourne and Australia have a commercial feel to them.
Yeah.
So what was happening is that the underground tech house was now being pushed. The needle was being pushed to underground. No one will book me. Okay, I've got to play a little bit more commercial remixes. And then it was getting real commercial. And I'm like, this is not where I want to be. And I was leaving every gig terrified that they hated me, that they didn't like me. And they didn't. They didn't like my stuff. They couldn't rebook me because I was too left field, And if I came any further, I would just be another party DJ, and I didn't want to do that. I couldn't stomach it. I'm like, no, thank you. So, yeah.
So where does it leave you?
I know. So I ended up, having a conversation, and I'm like, I don't think, with my manager, I'm like, I don't think I'm doing, Lucky Entertainment any service. Like, I don't want to play, man. Yeah. I don't care if they're not rebooking me. I don't want to play the stuff that is on the table and it's stressing me out, and I'm walking away from every gig and I'm getting, I was so stressed out. Like I was almost in tears going, this is not right. They hated my set. And I'm like, what can I do to the point where I don't hate it? So
technically you thought that your skills were at the level that you needed to be, but you just didn't think that you were playing the right music and you didn't want to compromise the music.
It wasn't true to me. I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it. And it wasn't fair to the venues. It wasn't fair to like the crowd. It wasn't fair to the agency. It wasn't fair to me. It was just, and I was the problem. I was absolutely the problem. I didn't want to compromise myself creatively because it was never about the music. Yeah. No, I don't want to make a living out of DJ. If it comes along, great, but I'm not chasing it. I'm not 20. I'm not trying to, be any crazy DJ. I don't want to be the top of the pile in Australia. I don't care.
Yep.
I don't
You were
care.
just following a passion.
That's it. I just want to play tunes that, make people dance. And if putting me in certain venues and the music that I play doesn't make people dance, well then that's not good for them. It's not good for me.
Yeah, so maybe Lucky is too commercial as an agency. You might need to try and find someone that is, the right fit.
Yeah, so we had a conversation about that, and it's like, well, where do you want to be? Like my manager's like, well, what do you want to do? Would you want to play a bit harder? Because that's the feedback we were constantly getting is that she's playing too hard, she's playing too heavy, she's playing too underground. Well, what fits that? oh, techno. Well, which is where I started anyway. I'm like, that's what I started downloading was trance and techno and stuff like that. So I'm like, well, I would like that. But I knew that, to get out and play, I had to play more commercial stuff to start off with to get my feet.
Yeah.
But I was getting pushed more and more. I'm like, I'm never going to get out of this. If I don't walk away now, I'm going to be stuck here.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to be known for. I don't want to be known for this.
So you made the choice to get out of there, and now you're just going to sort of take a bit of a break, reset, and then sort of go down more the techno sort of route?
So I was actually, and it was all really great timing. I was asked to play a set at District 1, which is on Friday, Love Machine Asian Night. So amazing. It's like one of my favourite nights ever. They are the best. And they were so lovely and hospitable. They're like, I'm like, what do you want me to play? Like, what are you looking for? And they're like, we want you to play techno. I'm like, you what? You want me to play techno? All right. So I played all my favorite techno tracks, and that set had no flow. I just played whatever, and it was all over the place. But it was a vibe, and I'm like, this is where I need to be. And just as that was happening, I was in the middle of having conversations with my manager going, I don't think I want to play tech house anymore, or the variation of tech house that Australia is in at the moment. I want to play heavier stuff. Should we do that? And then all that conversation started to roll. And as soon as I played that techno set at District 1, that was it. I'm like, this is where I need to be. And I absolutely frothed that set. It was amazing. And you can see me, I was like dancing the whole time. People are like, oh, she's just dancing. I'm like, yeah, because I'm just a fancy iPod. This is what I listen to. This is my Beatport playlist. It was awesome. It was so good. I loved it. So...
And that's where you're going to be heading, and you're going to keep doing the techno.
Yeah. So I'm playing Boiler Room XXL with Dangerous Goods.
Awesome.
And I've done. I'm now under the Hardware banner. So I've signed with Hardware, and we're just in the throes at the moment of doing music, creating music. So I'm going to say this, and come at me, I don't care. Whatever. And I'm working with a producer at the moment because I don't have the skill set to do the heavy lifting, and all the stuff with Ableton and what have you. That's a complex program.
Takes years.
Exactly right. And I don't have the heavy lifting, but my God, I am so on top of the producer. Every bit of that track is me. And I just need someone to do the heavy lifting for me.
Yep.
And it's a case...
You've got the idea in your head, but
Absolutely.
You just can't make it happen.
I just can't make it happen, So I am all over him. Every single part of that track is absolutely me. It's like, give me all those 303 plugins. Give me this sound, this sound, this sound, this sound. And I have given him this fruit salad of specific sounds, and he has put it in a little folder, and he's like, that is the Isabelle folder of sounds. And we have very carefully mapped out a sound, which obviously will evolve, but that's my...
Yep.
And it's been it's been a work in progress. Nothing happens overnight. Everyone's got day jobs. And that has been since I signed with Hardware, and it's been a long process. It's probably been about 3, 4, maybe 6 months. I've lost track of time. But yeah, so
what's going to happen with this project? Is it going to be an EP? Is it just going to be a couple of tracks?
It'd just be a couple of tracks just to see where I'm at the moment, and sort of develop a sound. And yeah, so I do the wiggle test on the track. So if I find myself vibing in the car, I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's the sound. So it's the
And so you're going to release that on Hardware?
No. So we're not sure who we're going to release that to yet. So we're just... Maybe no one will want it. Maybe no record company will want it.
But no, I heard this awesome quote the other day from Rick Rubin, and he said, you make art that you want, and then other people will like it. You know what I mean? So if you make, and that's like with your DJing and starting to do that, if you're playing music that you don't like, then people are going to pick that up pretty quickly.
Oh, mate, it was written all over my face. Despite all the Botox, people could see it. She really looks pissed off. I'm like, I fucking hate this track. But yeah, you can see even from all the videos from District 1, dude, I was vibing. I was singing along. It was the best time ever. So I'm like, this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
So
aside from the music stuff, what else are you doing? Are you still the OnlyFans stuff, the online stuff? Are you still doing that?
So that's playing in the background. That is not... that is no longer my primary. And I'm not saying that I've abandoned OnlyFans and stuff like that. I have stopped shooting studio. I will never shoot studio again for the foreseeable future. I'm not shooting any more boy-girl content. I'm sort of done with that. No new boy-girl content will come out. I'm sorry. I still have stuff in the bank that I haven't edited and loaded, but it is very old content, so I'll be sitting on that. You know, so it's just not... Isabelle Deltore is not what I used to be 12 months, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
You've got to evolve and mature.
Exactly right. But I'm like, how long do I hang on to it for? Like, I'm 42 next month. Like, how long do I hang on to it? Am I 45, 50,
but
still doing that?
But that's the thing there's all different niches, and I'm sure the mature niche is probably just as popular as the younger niche.
I'm already in that MILF category. I don't want to be a GILF.
Oh, what is it? That would be a daunting thing. So you send off a video and people go, oh, yeah, we love this GILF content.
And I'm just going to put it out there. I do not have children. I have horses instead. They eat all my money and drink all my tears. I do not have children. I have no desire to have babies, ever. I'd rather eat a bag of hair. Anyway, but I don't want to be in that GILF category. Like, I just...
Okay. So MILF's fine, GILF's not.
MILF's fine. If you're over 21 and you don't look like a cheerleader, you're technically MILF, whatever.
Is that how they break them down?
That's how they break it down. But I'm just like... And it's been 13 years. That's been a long time to be Isabelle Deltore. Like, I just took... Like we were talking, I've taken a month off, like, social media because it was driving my whole life.
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, I don't want to wake up and check my Instagram first thing in the morning. Like, I haven't even signed into Instagram for, like, nearly a month. And it was difficult to get a hold of me. I'm like, I just need to check out.
Yep.
Just need to not be Isabelle for 5 minutes.
But you've got 500,000 people on there that are waiting for you.
You know, I can fucking wait longer. I don't care. Look, I will, like, December was a lot. I had a lot of projects going on. I was studying some equine stuff just for me. You know, I had a lot going on with horses and I just needed to be grounded. And December's always a difficult, busy time and I was just done. I'm like, man, I have no more bandwidth for anything else. Like, I have no more bandwidth for Isabelle Deltore right now. Like, you can calm down. So, yeah.
And it must be hard with that many followers, like, you know, I'm sure you've just got so many people reaching out and so much to deal with that it just must be like you open the app and go, can't deal with this and fucking shut it down.
Dude, if we do reading Isabelle's DMs, you'd be like, what the hell is wrong with people? Like, I no longer really get dick pics that much, which is good. But, you know, hey, baby, how are you? Can I come fuck you? Can I meet you? And I'm like, dude, you're in France. Physically impossible. And two, get out of my DMs. Like, you wouldn't say that to someone in person. Fuck off. Like, I can't tell you to fuck off enough. Like, get out of my shit.
Is it all dudes? Is there ever any like girls like, hey, I really want to aspire to be like you? And
I have a few girls going, hey, how do I get into the industry? Or they just ask me entitled questions. I'm like, I don't know you. I owe you nothing. Fuck off. Like, I'm not even answering you. It's mainly like skewed guys, you know. I've actually had a few people, like, and I don't get this very often, which I think I'm very fortunate, but I did have a spate of people telling me that I should just go kill myself, like I was disgusting and whatever. I don't know what the deal is, but it was like hectic. It was like if you had someone who was like emotionally fragile, that would be enough to push someone over the edge. Some of the stuff that was being written to me from various different like burner accounts, some of the nastiest, grotesque shit to me. And I'm like, oh, really, buddy? Just keep watching my Pornhub and jerking off because I know you are. I know you're doing that. You are writing these horrible messages with one hand on your dick. I know it.
Yeah, and that's I guess a sign of the times that people feel a lot more entitled and close to other people when all they've done is click a follow button and somehow they feel like they know you.
And there's actually, I've forgotten the name of it. There's actually a term for it where people create relationships in their head and with a digital fictitious character. Yeah. So, you know, and it's wild. You know, and one of my it's one of my pet hates, but it comes with the territory and it is what it is. But I absolutely hate it when I'm in Safeway or whatever and someone's like, I get a message on my Instagram later, hey, were you in like Safeway in Laverton or whatever, wherever I was? And I'm like, yeah, I was. You following my car? Like I had someone following my car. and I had a really unique car and followed me home and then broke into my apartment.
Yeah, that's fucked.
It was wild, you know. So it's just...
No one should have that happen to them, but I guess the more out there you are, the more at risk you are. Like, I'm not justifying that person's actions, but the more out there you are, the more people and the more...
But it's part of the territory, and it is what it is, and I absolutely hate it. That's why I hate going out. Like, I've got a girlfriend who's very recognisable in Melbourne. She's quite a big Melbourne personality. And people are like, oh, hey, you know, I saw you here, there, whatever. And they're up in her grill. Like, she can't go anywhere without someone. And I, you know, find that too. I can't go anywhere without someone saying, hey, can I get a photo with you? Or, hey, Isabelle, how are you? And I don't mind fans coming up. It's part of the territory. I'm not saying that, you know, leave me alone or whatever. But if it could not happen, I wouldn't be mad about it. But it is what it is. Like, you know.
You can't have the cake and eat it too. Like, you've
exactly.
got it does come with the territory somewhat in any kind of level of fame, you know? Like, whether it's that industry or whether it's just you're on fucking TV.
No, exactly right. And it does, and it happens. It just happens. If you're in the public eye in any way, shape or form, that's the consequences. Again, there's consequences with every action, and that's part of it. It comes kit and caboodle. Like, you can't enjoy that kind of success and, you know, that kind of notoriety, which puts you at the top of the pile, which you kind of need to be at the top of the food chain, and then not have anyone recognise you. It's just unrealistic expectation. Yeah,
for sure. So do you think that you will continue with social media but just in a different capacity? Would you try and, if you're going to sort of leave Isabelle Deltore in the future, before the GILF stage,
yes,
will you try and pivot that sort of following into something else? Would you do?
Look, if I wasn't DJing at the moment, I would have, and I'm going to say parked Isabelle Deltore. Yeah. So what I mean by that is delete every single bit of content on all my social medias.
Wow.
Leave them blank so they're parked so no one can turn around and create AI or whatever of me. Leave them parked so those profiles can't be taken and just disappear.
Right.
But
that would definitely be detrimental to your OnlyFans in the background.
See, that would have been finished as well. So you can't have one without the other. Yeah. So you do need social media to drive the people to your OnlyFans because it doesn't have a search function. So you need to be able to drive traffic to it, and that is the reason for social media. Other than that, like, if I wasn't DJing and I had found, you know, and I had ventured down a path where I was no longer doing OnlyFans, one day just all my posts will be deleted and I will just disappear into the ether. Poof, gone.
Yeah. But you know what some people would do for 500,000 followers on Instagram?
You know what?
Do you know what, though? Seriously?
I know. And it's just like, I'm very fortunate, but also, like, I would like to reiterate, and this sort of, I didn't get as much as I thought I would, but, you know, when career DJs turn around and go, she's just getting booked for her social media. Yeah, I'm getting booked for my social media. Fair enough, I didn't earn my stripes in the music industry. And I'm the first one to say, yep, I'm a new DJ. I come with a different set of challenges. I didn't get the luxury of being a promoter DJ, making heaps of mistakes. I came in with a profile and I got grilled for it. And people were watching me like with a magnifying glass, you know. And I felt very, very under the microscope with that. There was no room for error, you know. And when I did make errors, people talk shit about me. Whatever, talk shit. But, you know, I didn't get that luxury. So, you know, and I have to earn my stripes. So, but I also I earned my stripes in other ways. Like, I spent months overseas. You know, I sacrificed so much to enjoy that success overseas and to earn those 500,000 followers, you know. And, like, don't come at me going, I didn't earn that. Like, fuck off, I did earn it. And, you know, jumping over to music, it doesn't all translate, but I earned my stripes in another field. For
sure. And then you've got X or Twitter or whatever as well, which is, like, I don't delve into that, but I had a look on there.
Australians don't really like it. Yeah. So.
But you've got a big following on there too.
Yeah, I've got nearly 1 million on there actually. I don't even know.
I had a look at 900 and something thousand.
Yeah. So, but X is a bit of a funny beast now. It's not what it used to be. You know, it's a platform for like politics and porn essentially now and news.
Well, you've got no ideas to get into politics anytime soon.
You know, I think I would make a terrible leader. Absolute terrible leader.
But I guess if it is, like you said, politics is important, but if you are pushing the OnlyFans, then I guess that's another one of those social medias you just got to stay on top of.
Yeah, exactly right. So, and I'm very, very bad with TikTok. Like, I'm just not of that generation, and I can't bring myself to do it. I can't do it. Even like, I've only got 25,000 on TikTok, but even like everyday stuff, like, I feel like I'm boring. I'm not interesting in my day-to-day life. No one wants to see me getting up and getting into clothes that I look homeless and going and feeding my horses and then coming home and watching Netflix. No one wants to fucking see that shit.
My partner, right, she doesn't have horses. She's never had horses, but she on TikTok follows horse accounts with people that have horses. So maybe there is...
I'm telling you now, be careful. She might buy one on you.
No, we're not buying a horse, but maybe you're feeding your horses. Maybe that is content.
Maybe. But it's also, too, it comes with a line, like how much of my personal life do I sell? I have allowed people to see me in the most vulnerable and intimate settings and, for very lucrative financial gain, but also it's come at a cost. What is left? So I don't air my dirty laundry on social media ever.
Makes total sense.
I will never buy into anyone's bullshit online. I will never call anyone out online or anything like that, because that's not, I don't believe that that's a good thing to do. I will not fuel that. If I got extremely sunburnt, I'm not about to post on there going, oh my God, I look sunburnt, look at this. I'm like, it looks like I've been boiled alive at the moment. I'm an idiot. But I'm not about to put that on social media. Who wants to see that? Oh yeah, I fed my horses and got sunburnt today. No one cares.
Yeah, I think people do care though, because this is just
really.
me.
I don't think I'm that important though to warrant that.
I had a chat with a mate the other day I bumped into, and he's like, I'm no good at this social media stuff. I need to put some stuff out. Everyone tells me. Yeah. And he was just saying the same thing as you. He goes, oh man, no one cares. I'm like, yeah, but they sort of do.
I think it's weird because I don't think I'm that important. I don't think my life is that important that would warrant putting it out there for everyone to see. Like, I just don't think, it's not that I don't matter, but I'm just not.
But I think it's really important, like you said, that you've showed people a lot.
Yeah, like what more do you
need your own home stuff to stay to yourself, because like what else have you got left then if they know everything?
Yeah. So, and I mean, for an example, like when I had my apartment broken into, and if I was to say, for example, if I was to sell my house and list it with the address, I shoot content in that. So what happens if I turn around and take, the real estate comes through, takes photos, and then I sell my house? Whose house is that? I know that house. What happens then? Do you know what I mean? Do I have someone else following? Come to the open day? Like,
Yeah. Have you seen that? There's a woman on TikTok who she makes it her thing is she finds where people live. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen a few people doing that.
Yeah, she does it like that thing. She'll find from one photo, and people challenge her, and she always finds them.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that if someone had the inclination, anyone can find anyone. And I am going to say this, like, I went out to dinner with a few girlfriends, it was a few years ago now, and one of them, she was a bit of a loose cannon. She was a bit of a big personality. And she posted on her social media the restaurant, like the menu, and we knew the owner of that particular restaurant, and literally 45 minutes, under an hour later, someone was at the front going, hey, I'm looking for this girl. She's here with her friends. And the owner's like, do you know this person? She's like, no, some random name. And I'm like, I'll go have a look. And the guy standing at the front was just random. John Smith.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we don't know this person. What the hell? No.
It's because we're the same sort of age. We know how to use social media to a point where we don't want to overshare. I think the younger kids want to put everything, like they're always doing stories and all that sort of shit, which, I think social media is great from a market business point of view, but if you're trying to overshare your life, it's, oh man, like that, yeah.
I think that's a whole basket of issues in its own respect. Like I said, I don't think that I'm not valid enough, but I'm like, what do I have? What is my everyday life that I feel like I need to share with the whole world and lay it bare? So, and then we're looking at average run-of-the-mill kids, and I don't mean this to sound condescending in any way, shape or form, but these kids put their whole life out there, and I'm like, well, who's looking at that? Who's looking at all that kind of stuff? And I feel like it feeds into the sense of entitlement, like, you think that your whole life
Is a reality show.
And that everyone should look at your whole life and you're entitled to put that. I mean, go for it, put your stuff online. But there are deeper concerns with that, So I'm just a tiny wheel in the whole cog of the world. And really, when you look at it, we are such a blip on the radar, like my 80 years on this earth, or whatever I have is insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, no, that's totally true with what kids they think. I think that they're just looking up to other people that are...
it's a culture thing.
Yeah, so they look up, and now, when we were young, people, what do you want to be? You'd have unrealistic goals. I want to be a rock star. I want to be a rapper. I want to be a fucking AFL player, whatever.
Yeah.
Now kids just say, I just want to be a YouTuber. That's number one thing
I
want
to be a gamer. I want to do whatever.
That's it.
It's not a career, man. For the lucky few it is. For the lucky few it is.
But that's what they're aspiring to be.
Yeah, exactly
and they're
right.
seeing those people do that, so they think if I do that, I can get to that level.
Yeah, exactly right, And it's... When I was in LA, I saw a guy and he looked homeless. He looked so homeless. And he was wearing, I don't know what the hell he was wearing. It was awful. Says me, the fashion guru. But he stepped out of this hectic, I think it was a Lamborghini. And he stepped out of this hectic car. And it was at the Roosevelt Hotel in LA. I love that place. And I'm like, what the hell? But that was LA New Money. And I'm like, and the person I was with goes, oh, that's so-and-so. He made an app or something like that. It was new technology. And that guy got, massive bankroll from that, So, but these people, obviously, those people happen. They do happen, but they are the exception to the rule. And you need to excel and be excellent in your field to do that.
That's the thing. Yeah, you've got to. That's the thing that I think a lot of these young kids that are aspiring to do that. You have to be good at something. Just doing social media isn't the thing. You need to have something and then do social media for that thing.
Yeah, exactly right. You need to excel in your chosen area. So you don't just get a gold star for the sake of existing.
Yeah.
No, you don't get a participation award for life. No one owes you anything.
No.
You're not entitled to anything. The world owes you zero.
Do you know that I'm just thinking, because you go, your day-to-day stuff isn't that interesting, but you could have really leaned into I'm going from the adult industry into the DJ world and follow me with this, even showing people that are giving you grief, the whole process. You could show the hours you put in. That could be interesting.
I had thought about that, the process of doing that. And I'm going to show a bit of vulnerability here. I was so scared that people would hate me for it, that people would, that I would be so judged for it. And I was just like, I'm even getting a hot flush now thinking about it. My God.
But if you were just open and honest about it, then you put it out there. You can say, I feel vulnerable. I feel like I've got a bit of imposter, but I'm learning and you can come with me on this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sweating balls now. My hands are sweating now just thinking about it. And I felt like I would be so judged for it. And this is another reason why I very rarely do podcasts. I think this is the second podcast I've done. I very rarely like to be interviewed in case I get taken out of context or, and I was just so scared that I felt like an imposter anyway.
Yeah.
So...
But you're pivoting out of your chosen field into something else, and if you showed that process along the way, I think that definitely could be interesting. I think you just got to do it with the vulnerability there.
Yeah, that's it. So maybe I should explain to people that the set of challenges I had, I didn't come into DJing without a set of challenges. My set of challenges were unique. So from the promoter DJ who has to grind and all that kind of stuff, at the beginning of their career, I have a different set of challenges where I was under the microscope at the beginning of my career. Venues had different expectations of me and it was crushing. The weight of that was crushing. But I got gigs that a promoted DJ would never get. So it was a bit of a double-edged sword, whereas I'm envious of promoter DJs or beginner DJs who had the luxury of making mistakes without being crushed, under that weight. So if they played a shitty set, I mean, they might not get booked again at that venue, but
part of the learning process.
It wasn't detrimental. Like, it didn't go on your scorecard because people expected them to be a brand new DJ. I didn't get that.
Yeah, totally. I think that you probably, because of your level of online presence, probably jumped a few levels with those.
Absolutely.
You're doing main sets rather than doing that 9 o'clock when the busboy's still fucking putting the tables out type scenario.
Look, don't get me wrong. My first gig was through a friend and I played it back to back. And then my second gig, I actually emailed a venue in Ballarat and I said, I'll pay for $50.
For $50?
I played for $50. And it's not the first time and it will not be the last time that I've paid for $50, I can assure you. So I've even got venues that they still haven't paid me.
That's a challenge in itself.
Oh, man, I'm going to chase whatever.
Yeah.
Don't pay me the $100, whatever.
Yeah.
But I actually had, and I'm not going to say this venue, I had a venue who they booked me. And they've booked me twice. And then my agent goes, we can't rebook you at this venue. And they're like, she played too underground again, And I'm like, what the hell? So the guys, and the promoter, the guy who does the booking wasn't there that night. But the other guys, like the handlers, I don't know what you call them, but they were looking after me. There were other DJs that worked there as well. They were like, man, smashed her set. It was awesome. And this was coming from two different people who'd asked these guys. But the booking guy's like, yeah, kind of didn't really, whatever. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, and I really took offense to it. And I'm like, right, I was gutted because I thought I played a good set, But then the guy who didn't see me play, who's responsible for the bookings, is like, yeah, no, we don't really like her. I'm like, oh, what do you want from me?
That's a game of Chinese whispers, though. Like, it could have just been somebody who works there that goes, man, she was playing too heavy, whatever,
Yeah, that's it. So I don't really know. I will never know the actual reason, And then I had another venue. They unfollowed me on social media. And I'd played a few sets at this venue. And they had unfollowed me on social media. I'm like, what are you, 5?
It
was weird. And they haven't booked me again, which is fine. And there's a whole reason behind that. I'm not going to go into it. But I'm like, why did you follow? Like, who does
in 2024, the unfollowing on social media is the equivalent of just saying to somebody, I hope I never ever see you again.
I know. And I'm like, it was just so weird. I'm like, is your follow account so precious that you need to unfollow another DJ? So it'll be interesting to see, like, just say all right, so in a perfect world, my tracks will blow up and I'll be super famous.
But you don't want the fame.
I really don't know. I don't care. I don't care, whatever. But if my tracks, like, if that all takes off and that gets momentum and I follow that train of whatever happens, it would be really interesting if they ever follow me again. I'm going to ignore that follow. I'm going to be petty.
It's definitely true. It's like there's a few people who remain nameless that I messaged at the start of doing this podcast journey. Not that I'm doing like it's huge numbers or anything, but they just weren't interested or never wrote back.
Yeah.
And then as I've started to build some momentum, they're like, oh, do you still want to do that thing? Like after it sort of has some momentum.
You know what? And then the question is like, do I be petty and just like leave them on red? No. Or you're like, all right, you want to come on? All right, you can come on.
Yeah, no, I think the right thing to do is to be like, yeah, well, I wanted to talk to him in the first place, but I think, some people, and I just saw some correlations with what you're talking about, that they wait until they can get something out of it, and if you could help them in the future, I'm sure that's when they will refollow you.
Yeah, that's it. So they'll just be charged the fuck you rate.
Yeah, well, that's it.
And you hurt my feelings rate.
Yeah, but I guess that must happen a bit on social media. People are like, can you follow me back? You're like, what? If I follow everyone, then how many people am I going to fucking follow?
Yeah, that's it. And look, and I feel shit because my social media is quite large, which means that I lose a sense of, like, I don't know who follows me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got no idea. If you've got a smaller account, of course, that's a little bit, you can you know, you get a sense it's a little bit more intimate. But if you've got like 500,000 people on there, and you're like, I don't know who's who. I can't keep up with what's, and if especially
you couldn't see notifications and that's the thing. So
Oh,
you'd
mate.
get people that'd be like you're real life friends with, like, hey, I commented on this thing. You're like, well, I don't know, it's lost in the fucking
Exactly right, you know. So, and I've thought about creating a personal account for just friends and stuff like that. But then I came into what am I going to post? I'm not interesting. No one cares. No one cares that I've woken up and I look homeless and I'm sitting there drinking my second coffee for the day, trying to work out my life for that day. And all right, what I'm going to have? Should I take my ADHD medication today so I'm actually a productive, working, functioning member of society? Or should I just fluff about confused for the whole day, and get one task done? What am I going to do today? No one wants to see that struggle from day to day.
There's lots of ADHD struggles on social media. People put it out there a lot.
I'm. It's interesting because I know everyone's like, oh, I'm diagnosed with ADHD. I'm like, I have one of the OG original diagnoses of ADHD. Like, I'm talking years and years, and I hate my medication. I hate it.
Yeah, I had Wiz on this podcast months ago, and he didn't want to take his medication, and he's just like, man, I think it's like a power. He goes, I like having it. He goes, that's part of me. There's different ways to look at it.
Look, I think with being neurodivergent, I think it's and taking that medication too. Like, I'm not in a position where society dictates that I need to be super organized. Like, I'm not working in an office. I don't really have deadlines. Like, I just sort of float around in my own little ether and just do my own thing. But I also, and I've never spoken about this publicly, like, I was also diagnosed with type 2 bipolar, or bipolar 2. So, and that was probably about 3 years ago during COVID. So really late diagnosis. So when I'm, what they consider high functioning bipolar. So when you couple that with ADHD, when my medication that I'm on, they don't work well together.
Right.
So I either have well functioning bipolar medication, or I compromise that and add to the possibility of anxiety, which is like crippling, by taking my ADHD meds. So I can never back my ADHD meds 2 days in a row. Otherwise, I am in trouble with my bipolar meds.
So do the doctors, what do they suggest that you do, or they're conflicting with each other as well?
So what we did is, my psychiatrist is amazing. He's so cool. And anyway, he's like, well, let's figure out what symptoms are really affecting your life. Yeah. And for me, the set of bipolar, symptoms was detrimental to me functioning, because I'm not in an office environment that requires the ADHD medication. So, but when I started my bipolar medication, I was very fortunate. He put me on something called Lamictal, which is very soft. It's actually for epilepsy. So it's a very soft bipolar medication. I'm a very low dose. But the way I started to interact with the world was so different. Like, I saw the whole world like completely differently, game changing.
Because you could focus, or?
No, I had emotional regulation, right, okay. And just the way I saw everything was game changer, absolute game changer. And I can't believe that I didn't get that diagnosis earlier. Like, there was screaming signs since I was 15. Like, it was... I don't know how every healthcare professional missed that at every stage in my life. And it was actually a GP who wasn't my regular GP actually caught me when I was in a manic stage. And she's like, dude, you got bipolar. I'm like, no, I just have anxiety. I just should be on Valium. No, it was bipolar.
Right.
So we sort of, my psychiatrist was like, okay, well, let's work out what medication is best for the set of, symptoms that you're displaying that are ruining your life, and it just turned out it was the bipolar meds.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I guess it's not always that simple, but it's taken you a long time to sort of figure out that was the unbalance there.
Absolutely. And I'm, it's only now that I realize that when I was talking earlier about the decision to go and film adult content, I can tell you with 1,000% certainty that I was off the charts manic. And I find that my cycles vary in severity.
Yep.
So, maybe once a year I'll have, once or twice a year, I will have a very severe cycle of extreme depression, like dangerously extreme depression, and also very extreme mania. Not to the point I'm not hearing voices or anything like that, but my decision making is just off the charts. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to America and I'm going to go do this. There was no afterthought of that. I'm like, I'm just going to go do that. If I hadn't been medicated, I would never have made that decision.
Really?
Yeah.
So that would have pivoted your whole career
My
trajectory?
whole life would have been different.
Really?
And I actually had a girlfriend ask me a few weeks ago, she's like, if you had been diagnosed when I first displayed very severe symptoms, when I was in high school, grade 9, would your life have been different? And I said, yes, for the worse. And she's like, why? Because back then they would have prescribed me lithium, and I would have been functioning with mush for a brain. Like everyone sees Britney Spears. That is the long-term effects of lithium. And it would have destroyed my personality and me as a person. But with the Lamictal I'm taking, I'm able to still keep my personality intact. I just have, like, instead of my emotional range being this, it is now this.
Yeah.
So I still have emotional range, but it's not detrimental to my life.
Yeah.
So, if I was to take something like Seroquel or lithium, what have you, I would have no emotional range. It would be completely flat.
Yeah, and that's not that's just existing. That's not living.
Yeah, exactly right. And when you're a really creative person like what I am, it is horrible. So we had played around a little bit, like bipolar meds sort of, it takes a bit to get correct balance. So we'd played around a little bit with Seroquel because I wasn't sleeping very well. But what that had done is it had done this to me. So things that I would usually really enjoy, I had no feeling towards, so I didn't really want to do anything. And it acted like depression because I didn't want to do anything. I was sleeping great, but, all the joy out of life had been taken out of it. My critical thinking and my creative thinking, it was like someone had put a cup over my critical thinking and I couldn't expand,
You're trapped.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't expand the creative thought process, but I was very regular to the point where I was like, I may as well just be dead, mate. Yeah. So then we were like, okay, that doesn't work for me, and we backed it off. So it was a mild depression for me in a way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's interesting just playing with, the different medication and stuff like that and how I'd gotten away with not being diagnosed, or I had not done myself a serious mischief, during my life. Like, I don't know how I'm still alive,
Have you found the balancing point now, though?
Absolutely. Like, and it's still ebbs and flows and things like that. It's still a challenge and every day is different, and it's just being very mindful of, okay, why do I feel like I need to buy $1,000 worth of horse supplements that I don't need today? All right. This is not a sane thought process. Let's just double check that. So it's just management as well.
Yeah, and I guess you just got to understand that when you are making these big decisions, to make sure you do them in the most stable.
Yeah, if you can put that thought down and go back to it in 2 days and you're not hyper-focused on it, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
So.
But no regrets, though, so far.
No regrets. Look, it is what it is. Like, I don't regret the decision I've made. If I could remake those decisions, I think I would have chosen some different options. But who doesn't? Like, hindsight's a beautiful thing. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So.
And you've got to. You can't think back in anything in life because you don't have the level of maturity you do now.
No.
So that everything changes.
No, exactly right. So, and I suppose I had never really spoken about, mental illness publicly because I don't feel like it's my space to educate people or anything like that. Like, I'm not a role model for anyone. I don't think I should be a role model for anyone, even though I suppose that sort of might come with the territory at some stage. But, I'm still figuring it all out myself. So what advice am I going to give someone else?
No, but you can still attack it with someone with a level more maturity, and I guess you can also say to people, go and make sure the diagnosis that you are for mental health are legit and maybe get a second opinion. Because,
absolutely. Yeah. It was just by accident that I had been diagnosed, and I had gone and sought, assistance from different medical avenues, intermittently, and they all missed it. Like, and they're like, oh, you're just
Were
depressed.
you being open and honest, do you think? Or do you think that you had a bit of a wall up when they were...
They hadn't caught me at the right stage of the cycle. So they're like, you're just depressed. I thought what would happen is I would have these amazing moments of like creativity and inspiration, and then I would work, and then I would just be tired from that and I would be burnt out. And that's how I presented. And this is the issue where, I'm somewhat high functioning to the point where I was very good at hiding it and learned coping strategies of how to function in society outside of that. So it was hidden very well. And it wasn't a case of not telling, health professionals what was going on. I didn't know. I didn't have the ability to describe what was going on adequately for them to give me a diagnosis.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
So,
and does now these sort of medications, now that you've found your sort of balancing point and you're happy on them, is that something that's now like for life, or do you try and wean off this sort of stuff? Like,
no.
I don't know. Like,
so this particular medication, it's cumulative, and it's actually heat sensitive. I'm again, this is a little vulnerable piece of information, so I'm going to share it with all of you. So this particular batch of Lamictal, I suspect maybe it was like it had been exposed to heat. And anyway, so 4 days I got in of taking the medication. I'm like, I'm not all right. Like, I'm a danger to myself. This is not okay. So the logical component of my brain was like, something's not quite right. And the emotional irregularity was like off the charts. So I had involuntarily...
Can you tell that yourself, though? You know.
I knew something was so wrong.
Okay.
Like, so very wrong. And I ended up going into the chemist and I'm like, there is something wrong with my medication. It took me day 5 before I realized that, like, I'm not okay. What do? Do I go and seek help from a hospital? Because I can't be left alone right now. I know that I'm a danger to myself right now. And it wasn't... It was just I had involuntarily accidentally come off the medication because it was not effective. And
because
so
it wasn't stored correctly.
It was a bad batch.
Yeah.
Something was not right with the batch. So I went into the chemist. I'm like, look, I'm really unwell. This is not okay. I'm like having an absolute mental breakdown. I'm not all right. And I said, there is something wrong with this batch. Can you please mark this serial number down, whatever it is? There's something wrong with it. And they're like, okay, well, look, we'll give you a new batch. And so once I had realised that there was something not quite right and I wasn't just losing I was losing my shit, but I'd found the reason behind it.
Essentially you went cold turkey.
Yeah. So, and I was able to, like, it took me 2 weeks to sort of get back to normal again, but it was very much... like I had to be very, very careful and very mindful. So I was still of right mind. It's not like I'm not of right mind. But what happens is the emotional regularity stops. So, when you've just got an impulse to go and buy something and you're like, oh, I've got buyer's remorse, times that by 10,000. Yeah. It's extreme. When you're having a really shit day and you're like, that girl broke up with me or whatever, or, a family member died, something like that, times that by 10,000 to the deepest level of despair, and then keep going. And that's where it goes. Yeah. That's where it goes. So
that's scary. And like you're talking about before with people that say shit on social media, someone in a really vulnerable time could open something up and says, fuck you, I hope you die. And then that's it.
Yeah. That's what happens. So, and it just, I'm just fortunate that I'm, somewhat intelligent, I think. But I was also, a little bit thick-skinned and what have you, so that stuff doesn't affect me. But can you imagine if someone had got me, like, on that 4th or 5th day where I wasn't okay, I'd accidentally come off my meds, and I was like, man, that's going to tip me over the edge. I'm on the Westgate Bridge. So, yeah.
Look, and that's the thing with social media. Like, if people are changing their medication, I think it's probably a good idea to give that a wide berth in it, whether you're coming off it or starting on it or whatever.
Just let someone know.
Yeah,
just let someone know. Like, I had to be in communication with with my best friend, saying, hey, look, this is what's going on. And when I decided that the Seroquel wasn't right for me, and I've been on it for a few months, I'm like, okay, I need to make a plan to come off the Seroquel. And, because that's another one that's cumulative and you can't just come off it. So I just made a bit of a plan for that, and that worked really well. you know. So I was very aware of it, and then I was able to make a really good plan.
And I think it's just timing as well. You've got to make sure if you're going to move house or you're going to change jobs or you've
Don't do it then.
Yeah, don't do it then. You want to
Don't do it then.
The thing is, and there's been bouts in my life where I've been on antidepressants and that sort of thing, and there's never going to be the perfect time when you're on that, but you want to try and make sure you're not in a stressful time.
You need to make a plan.
Yeah.
You need to plan for it. So, you know, don't come off it when you're planning for a wedding or, like you're about to move house or you're about to have a baby or something like that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
When you're chilling out, that's the time to do it.
Yeah. When everything's sort of like, you know, you're uneventful and life happens. But yeah, so.
We're going to have a little break.
Sure.
Because we've been going for 2 hours.
Damn, no one's going to listen to me talking shit for 2 hours. We have returned.
We're back. So you did, look, we've obviously touched on your own personal mental health.
Yeah.
And in the last few episodes of my show, I've talked to people about mental health within the graffiti community and that sort of thing, which obviously was never talked about, but leads me to mental health within the adult performer community.
Yeah. Look, we've had, I feel like it's almost like every year you end up seeing on Twitter that so-and-so has either passed away, you know, substance abuse, suicide. There's actually been a few girls in the stripping industry who committed suicide, you know, and vulnerable girls. One of my girlfriends, she actually borderline personality disorder. I don't know if she had any other mental illness going on. I suspect maybe, but she'd only just gotten married. And, she committed suicide and it was wild. All of us were, there was a group of us in Sydney and we heard that she'd hung herself, which is quite violent for a woman, especially. Like, it's quite final, you know. And, you know, men usually choose more violent avenues of suicide than females. So I was a little bit, sort of taken back that she had chosen such a violent method. But, you know, and that was like, whew, you know, that was really sad. And she was so very sick. And she'd sought help and stuff like that, but she was also a bit of a prickly personality too. So, you know.
That it is like in any sort of industry, there's obviously people with issues. I find that in the adult industry, it's a tough industry. And so whether or not the people had issues getting into it, but maybe they developed there, who knows?
Chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
I feel like probably unpopular opinion, and this is just from my perspective, that, like I said, if I had have been correctly medicated, I would never have entered into the adult industry at all whatsoever. I wouldn't have been in that place in my life. And I'm not saying it's a bad place when you say being in that place in my life. I just wouldn't have been in that space. I would have had a different reality, you know. So it makes me wonder that, you know, a lot of my girlfriends or a lot of, you know, people I do know in the adult industry, they do have mental health. Like, it is, you know, whether it's diagnosed, undiagnosed. Like, I know of a couple of other girls who are also bipolar, and it's a pretty small percentage of people who have bipolar.
Yep.
Like, and it's a top tier mental illness. Like, what are the chances? What are the chances, you know? You see so many of the performers over, you know, in America especially, and they're medicated for, you know, quite serious mental illness as well, you know. So it's, does that industry attract people with mental illness? Maybe, or does it exacerbate the mental illness? Probably that too.
Yeah. Well, and it's also an industry that is very superficial.
Absolutely.
So there's not too many businesses or industries now where if someone could go to work having a bad day and be told you look shit today or you don't live up to this standard, which is going to then fucking not be good for their mental health.
Look, I left, and I think it's with the entertainment industry full stop. You know, and I'm going to say, like, porn is much more honest than music. I'm going to say that right now.
Okay.
You know, it's much more transparent. So I knew full well that being so heavily tattooed, there are certain companies that were never going to book me. I'm not the kind of performer that sits well with that company's brand. And that's okay. That's fine. You know, it's horses for courses. You don't, and it's the same with the movies. You don't cast an actor that is not going to do a role justice. And adult film is no different. You don't cast just because, you know, you've got to be politically correct. It doesn't work. you know, but with and I knew that it was very transparent. But with music, it's a case of I couldn't get a straight answer out of venues. Like, why didn't you want to rebook her? I wanted to know so I could do something about it. I'm not taking it personally. I don't give a shit.
So you could better, you could, lean into it better. Yep.
Is there something that I need to focus on? Is there a different path? Is there something I could have done better? How do I up my game? Like, it's critical. It would be constructive criticism that I was looking for, and I could never get an honest answer. I'm like, just tell me, man. Like, I don't care what it is. Just tell me. Like, am I not the right fit for the venue? You know, she plays too heavy or too underground. Yeah, that's cool, man. But I know that's not the reason. Or, maybe we just won't book her again. But why?
Yeah.
You know, and it's fine. I'm not saying, look, don't get me wrong. Not every venue is like, nah, we're never going to rebook her again. Like, that's not a thing. Like, I'm not unbookable, like, by any means. But, you know, so it makes me wonder what the mental health is like also in the music industry, like just entertainment industry full stop.
Yeah.
So,
and it needs to be spoken about a little bit more. But, yeah, in those sort of industries, people put themselves right out there. So, look, if you are having a bad day or whatever, you're in the – people are going to – it's going to be a lot more highlighted than somebody who's got a fucking regular office job.
Yeah. If you're having a shit one – that's it. If you're having a shit one, thousands of people will see it. Like – I had my dog had died in a house fire a few years ago, and I flew out to America 2 days later. I couldn't cancel the trip. And I had never known grief and devastation of this level. Like, and it was, that's pretty violent. And I was really having trouble processing grief because I'd never really lost anyone that was so close to me and meant so much. So I'm very fortunate I've had no immediate family members die or anything like that. So this was my welcome to life, here's grief of someone or something that you really care for. And I was a mess for weeks, and I had to perform like a week later. And I'm like, how do I function in this scene and not bring my bullshit to the table? Yeah. Like, how do I not bring this and leave my baggage at the door? And it was hard. They were some of the hardest scenes I ever shot.
Yeah, for sure. So, without getting too personal, does shooting that sort of adult content really change your own personal intimacy stuff?
Absolutely. And anyone who say it doesn't, you're a fucking liar. And it's just, I had a lot of firsts on film. Wow, and I think this is another thing that people don't talk about. And, you learn what you're okay and what you're not okay with in real time. And I mean that from the point of view of you can be halfway through the middle of a scene and an action, a position, an act, something that you thought you might be okay with. Halfway through the scene, you're like, actually, I'm not okay with this. Yep. I feel uncomfortable. I feel violated. This is not okay. And the ability to say, hey, stop the scene, I'm not okay right now, like that is a skill that not every actor or actress has. So I mean from the point of view that there was a scene that I did, it was a particularly harder scene, which in hindsight, I wish I hadn't shot, but it is what it is. And, the producer is asking me to get myself into positions that were physically impossible, and the scene was getting to the point where it was reaching a bit of a line for me, and I'm like, I'm not okay with this now. So, I sort of looked at him, I'm like, you have 15 seconds to get a transition because I am not continuing in this moment. This is not okay. And he was like, yep, cool, no worries, and changed immediately. So, but I've walked away from scenes where I'm like, okay, I'm not okay with this, and I really pushed my boundaries. And it wasn't a matter of, I didn't have the voice to say no or what have you. I just didn't realize in the moment that I wasn't okay with it because it was new territory. Yep. And you don't know what you are and aren't okay with until you experience it, and consolidating that after a scene, and it didn't happen very often. It's only happened a couple of times where I'm like, fuck, I'm not okay with this and I'm not all right, and I feel quite vulnerable, and I feel like I had been assaulted. But I had given consent for that at the time. So you get this bit of a catch-22 where you're like, I didn't say no, but I consented and I let this happen to myself. And you go through a really weird, headspace with it, and consolidation of the scene. And they're some of the hardest scenes that I've ever shot. And once I realized that it wasn't, no one had done anything wrong. It was just I had found my boundary. I had found my line in the sand, and the moment had passed before I realized that I wasn't okay with that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing. It's not like, oh, we're all assaulted. It's a very vulnerable job. And the position we put ourselves in is an incredibly vulnerable position.
Yeah.
But no one is responsible for calling stop on a scene. The producer doesn't know. The male talent doesn't know. Only you know where you are in your own head and if you're okay in the scene or not. And it is up to the performer to say, I'm not okay, stop.
Yeah.
It's up to the producer and the male talent to create an environment that's safe enough for the female talent to say no. Mm-hmm. That's their responsibility.
So do you think that with more, as time progresses and the way that porn changes, that this stuff is going to be more, not regulated, but just more talked about,
When I sort of brought this topic up with other performers, they're like, whoa, I didn't think about that. I just think that maybe they don't process it, like they don't really think about it. Excuse me. And, when I had brought it up, they're like, yeah, that makes so much sense. I get it now. Like, and for lack of better description, they're like, I didn't know why I felt dirty after that scene. I'm like, well, it's not the fact that you felt dirty, but there was no other word. They didn't have the vernacular for it. Yeah. And it's a case of they didn't identify that in that moment they were not okay with that. So, and it's just finding your boundary, finding your line. It's no different to going home with a guy at being out and, you have a one-night stand. You've never had a one-night stand before. You've never done that. You never call him again. Am I okay with this? Not really. I won't be doing that again. And, women go through the same thought process. It's no different to real life situations. So only ours is in a clinical setting, so to speak.
So I'm interested to, you said that it does affect your personal intimacy. Does it affect, like, can you actually watch that content now? Like, of not yourself, of other people? Or is you just like, oh, I've seen how the cake's been baked, I'm not really interested? I've
never watched porn since I started shooting it. I even fast forward intimate scenes in movies.
Because you can just feel the cameraman hovering over.
Fuck off. Yeah. It makes me sick. And I don't say that. That sounds really bad, all right, but don't take this out of context. But even like, all right, Outlander. I love Outlander, right? It's a vibe. I love period dramas, all right? And even then, that was like really intimate, scene heavy. And I just fast forward. I'm like, fuck off. Like, I'm just sick of seeing it. Like, I'm so overseeing it. I've seen so much of it. I've been there, I'm like, I'm good. So I skip past it.
But yes. Yeah. So it has, for lack of a better term, it's sort of ruined it for you.
It's tainted me. And then every now and then you'll get a guy who'll be like, oh, hey, I can fuck like a porn star. And it's like, buddy, I have worked with some of the most elite male performers in the world. I have worked with some of the hottest guys on the face of the earth. Mr. John Citizen, I'm sorry, buddy, you were never going to cut it.
And I'm not replying to your DM.
Like, I'm good. Or even in person, they're like, hey, do you want to date?
They'll come up and say that to you, like the supermarket or something.
Yeah, when I've been like, out and about or something like that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm ruined. I am absolutely ruined for civilians. Like, but also too, can you imagine, it comes with another layer of complexity to it that if I have, John Citizen coming at me, is he just trying to fuck me for like clout? Is he like trophy hunting? Or does he actually like me for me?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Does he want this? Or does he want me sitting on the couch trying to decide what I'm going to do for the day after my third coffee? Like,
yeah.
And then also, what, you enter into the bedroom, what happens? Do they expect you to turn it on like they've seen you in scenes? Yeah. Like, are you expected to act?
Which isn't real life in general.
No. And look, don't get me wrong. I've had some of the best times at work ever. I've shot some amazing scenes with some amazing people. But it isn't real life. That's not how sex unfolds. Like if you were to see how scenes are shot, it doesn't happen like that in real life. You know, so obviously like my experiences are this in the sexual sphere compared to, you know, a regular person who might be this. You know, but it's how does that transpire to a civilian? And then if he's like, oh, he's having, you know, issues, he's like, can't get it up or comes too quickly, or do you know what I mean? Like there's a whole other layer of that. So it's finding the balance between the guy who's like overcocking and is like, oh, I just want a notch on my belt, or the guy who just can't perform, you know? So where do you
like everything,
find
there's
that?
balance in the middle.
Yeah, exactly right. You know, the guy who plays AFL football doesn't go back and play high school football, does he?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like any...
So now that you've entered into that realm, you're not going back to high school football.
It's ruined me. It's ruined me.
Do you want to tell us what you've got coming up in 2024? Obviously, there's some music stuff. Anything else?
So, you know, just in the middle of putting a track together. Hopefully it's a vibe from what I'm hearing. I'm like, yes, this is amazing. I'm playing Boiler Room XXL end of February, end of January, February. It's Australia Day weekend, actually. So that will be my first true to myself techno set. So this will be my first selfish techno set. And I've got a few other gigs after that. But I don't know. I haven't made any 2024 plans. We'll just...
That's good.
Lots of ponies.
Yeah, horse stuff.
And yeah, so we'll just see what happens. I don't know. No plans. Just roll with it.
So. Well, it's been a great chat, and I learned some stuff about you I didn't know. We also touched on some mental health stuff, which was awesome, and I'm hoping that people got a bit more of an insight into you and understand Isabelle Deltore as a person more than just the performer.
Yes, that'd be really great, and I'd be interested to see if people stick it out for the 2 hours.
2 hours plus, but no.
Sorry, guys.
No, thanks so much for coming. I appreciate you taking the time.
Anytime.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
3,000.